Ray Allen K9. It's no secret that we love Ray Allen K9 equipment. We use their products every single day at both Van Ness K9 and at Torchlight. Their mission statement says it all: to be the world leader in quality innovation for professional canine equipment for police, military, Schutzen, and ring sport. Tend to exceed their customers' expectations and deliver on time every time at a fair price. We full-heartedly believe that they've held true to that, since it is our go-to one-stop shop for everything K9, not just police dogs, but for any working dog.
This episode is also brought to you by our good friends over at Dogtra, dogtra.com. It's the e-collars that Ted and I use. It's the e-collars most police dog guys use. Dogtra.com, e-collars, bark collars, ball launchers, one-stop shop for everything you need for your working dog, dogtra.com.
One of the other sponsors we're proud to have is HITS Canine Training Conference. It's the premier canine training seminar in the United States, packed to the brim with the world's best instructors covering important topics from admins to liability to detection work, all and tracking and everything in between. There's no better place to learn and no better place to network with other handlers, breeders, and trainers. HITS 2022 is being held in Orlando in August. So hit them up, hitscanine.net.
We're super happy to be represented by our good friends at Kinetic Dog Food. We've got great reviews from people all over the place. Ever since we joined up with them and partnered with them, their commitment to your dog's nutrition is top notch. KineticDogFood.com. Check them out.
Jim over at NC K9 out in North Carolina. It's the culmination of 13 years of experience in handling or training law enforcement canines. They use real world deployments to develop their training program and rely not only on their experience, but the current experience of the nation's canine handlers provide the best canine partner you can get. They provide pet training and police canine training based out of Four Oaks, North Carolina, and they serve the surrounding areas as well as nationally. Feel free to call them and learn more about their dog training program, police canine techniques, and methodologies.
We got a brand new sponsor, man, American Aluminum Accessories. My entire time in canine, and ever since I've been involved in the dogs, the kennel in the back of our cruisers has always been American Aluminum. Check them out. We're so happy to have them on here. EasyRiderOnline.com, EasyRiderOnline.com for everything you need from American Aluminum Accessories.
Speaking of kennels, once you get out of the car, you got to have somewhere to put them. So our friends up in Ohio at Horizon Structures make a one-stop shop for kennel. If you want a 2-dog kennel or if you want a 20-dog kennel, they got you covered. They get those things built and they drop it off at your house. All you got to have is a pad, electricity, and water, and you can put dogs in it that day. Horizon Structures can build you anything from mild to wild, and it is the one-stop shop, and you don't have to swing a single hammer. So hit them up, horizonstructures.com.
All right, everybody, Working Dog Radio. We are back broadcasting the Bite. Another fantastic episode coming to you from Canton, Ohio. I am Eric Stambro. With me always from Tulsa, Oklahoma is our co-host, Ted Summers. Ted, what is going on, buddy?
Oh, not a lot. Worky. More of the same. We're getting ready to we adopted a 9-month-old. What are you doing? I got my dog came in here. We adopted a 9-month-old lab we got from lab rescue, and this thing is just like apparently is psycho. So I'm super excited about it. The last one I got from them, went to our buddies up in upstate New York, Ken and Ed from Dark Horse, up at the Albany County Sheriff's Office. That dog's name? Cruz. The Cruz, yeah. And that dog was psycho. Nice. He was a lab that would bite you. If you had
I had one of those too. It was awesome.
God dang. And he was a machine. Like, he'll find fucking drugs. I can understand why they I understand why the family that had him was like, they probably got him as like a pet. They're like, oh, and the husband was like, oh, I'm gonna use it for hunting too. And he did. So he's finding drugs in upstate New York. So this one, same thing. And then we're still working the puppies, got pets. We have a bunch of pit bulls right now.
How's the build out of the kennel going?
They got the air conditioner installed. The ductwork guy or whatever they call him is coming, and they're going to put all that shit in. And then after that, they're going to start all the drywall.
Just in time for cold weather.
Yeah. Well, they got the heater installed. I'm not really concerned about that. I told him, I was like, as long as I can keep it like 60 degrees in the summertime or in the wintertime, I'll be fine. I don't need it to be any hotter than that. But yeah, when it's in 110 with the heat index, I'm like, it's a little rough. Like, yeah, they're tough. Like, you can put a fan in there. I'm like, it doesn't matter. It's like put a fan in a sauna. It still fucking sucks. Yeah, it's still terrible. So
you mentioned having pit bulls a bunch. It's weird. It's so weird on the pet side how cyclical it is we'll go where every single one of my trainers has German Shepherds, and then everybody has doodles. And then we also have 6 pit bulls, I think, in the group right now, in the training groups. A couple just went home. It's crazy how that works, man. It's just really strange. I'm like, yeah, we haven't had a shepherd for a month, and they're like, shut your mouth, and here comes 10 of them. It's just really weird how that works out.
Yeah,
I'm about due for a doodle run, I think.
I got 2 shepherds right now. That one of them I think is Mattis' son. So his name's Taz.
Yeah, you told me. Is he nuts?
He's a little sharp defensively. He tried to smoke me the first couple of days we had him, and in my interns Paul and Jacob, he went after both of those guys. I'm like, well, so I took him out today, and I was like, all right, buddy, like today's the day. And he didn't do anything stupid. I taught him to wear a muzzle, so I had a muzzle on him for, I don't know, the first 15 or 20 minutes until I decided he wasn't going to act like a weirdo. I think he did great. I mean, he was like, I didn't let anybody touch him or anything, but I mean, he's, outside of that, he was, I mean, fantastic. So, yeah. I mean, what do you got going
on? I got a handler came in today. Well, yesterday he started. Sold a dog that we had, Vinny.
Oh, Vinny, I saw the
people saw. Yeah. Vinny was pretty much done. Somerville, South Carolina, came up and got him. I have another dog on that department. He's coming up for he's an experienced handler, so he's kind of helping us finish and getting Napwater-ish ready. That's what they got to certify in October, I think. But we started him on recall today on the slick floors at the old school, and he's a piece of cake. Dog's ready to go. So we just got to get this guy used to handling, because he had a shepherd for a long time. So to get him used to handling him out, just a little bit different.
Vinny is not his shepherd.
No.
I've
show him a couple of cool things, and he's a good kid, man. He's trying. The thing is, he's the only one, right? I have a bomb dog that I'm training for our buddy Scott. We just do detection with him and some tracking. Right. So I can't train this kid and his dog all day, right? So we're done at like 1:00. Yesterday was 2. So told him, I said, where your hotel is, there's a lot going on like around there for food and alcohol. Just enjoy yourself and chill out and enjoy the trip. So he'll be up here for a couple of weeks, and then he's going to go back and finish up at his place. So other than that, the usual, I have, let's talk real quick before we bring our guest on real quick about 2 dogs that you and I have. One pet dogs, one that I posted about several times, and then you followed up with that today. With your dog. So one of the things that in this pet dog stuff is a lot of the money is in dealing with behavior cases, reactive. And people are like, oh, he just bites out of fear, but he bites. So that you can't discount that. It might be a bite and let go, but he still bites, and he's fast at it. He's actually truly dog aggressive. I think he actually would kill a dog if he could. So that part there is a definite management situation. I don't believe you can cure dog aggressive dogs of being dog aggressive. But I've had him on place with other dogs walking by. Just don't let him do anything. And then on the fear reactive side, so what I did was, this reactivity and everything is almost always caused by the relationship at home with the owner and the way that the dog is growing up. They don't make the dog mean. People are like, oh, they're just shitty owners. No, they just don't know, right? Too much freedom of movement, too much free time, not enough rules, not enough structure, no leadership, too much unearned affection, all that stuff. Typically, I find those dogs to be kind of fat because of over, giving them treats and all that shit. So after he bit me, I got him into the kennel. And then the next day I put on the bite suit and I went in the kennel with him. He backed up against the back wall of the kennel, snarling, barking, screaming, basically, and pissed everywhere. But he didn't bite the suit. So
there you go.
I lassoed him with a slip lead. And what I did was I went outside for 30 minutes and just made him follow me everywhere I went. And I didn't talk to him. I'm now in charge. I'm the captain now. And I just walk around and make him follow me everywhere, and I don't talk to him. And after that, man, him and I were cool. He had 1 or 2 more episodes of kind of peeing and being fearful, but he would stop and let me throw the leash. Now him and I are buddies, like totally different dog. And all it was is me setting up rules, structure, leadership, and shrinking his world to a crate, long periods of crate, long, and a kennel, a small kennel, and place. And it's really transformed him enough that I could take him to Lowe's yesterday, just walk around. I don't know that it's a dog that I would really encourage the owners to take until they get super familiar with catching, things before they go up out of control. So there was he was a lot of scanning. There was a lot of correcting. But if you were a customer walking around, you really wouldn't know I was doing it. You really wouldn't see it that much. But I put him up on the piles of wood, and they had him lay down, because it always makes for a good picture, honestly. And people walking by, and a guy came up and stood next to me and talked to me. He started to shift like he was going to react. I corrected him, laid back down, never had a problem. But this is a dog that sees any human would launch at the end of the leash. Usually they have a distance he would see and go, and then the owner would grab him and just stop, hey, and grab him.
Yep.
And you just touched him. You just said it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, use that long thing, that 6 foot long stringy thing you have called a leash. Use it. So tell me, what are you? The dog you posted about today on a follow up, was that the Madison?
Well, yeah, but that really was, it was sort of about him, but I have another dog. We have 2 German Shepherds, both that are kind of like that when they're owners. The Madison, Taz wasn't like that. He definitely was like kind of funky. And his owners did a great job with a lot of the other stuff, but he's not very old, and they got COVIDed. So they couldn't take the dog out and socialize him and everything else. And he got mature and decided that he's going to be a German Shepherd and try and smoke people, right?
Yeah, with a father who's a police dog.
He's a big boy too. He is about I don't know how big he is. He's big. He's one of the biggest dogs I've had through. And but I had him out, and I could see signs of like anxiety or stress, and I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, what's wrong with you? And he would come to me and like nudge my hand. I'm like, get away from me. Like, what do you want? I'm not gonna pet you. No, I'm not gonna touch you. Get away from me. And and I would put him back in a down position, and then I started to figure out, like, but because he didn't do it at the kennel, did it in public. So, and I didn't allow him to do it at the kennel, because he'll work a place command like nobody's business. He'll sit there for an hour, right, and not move. And he's he was asleep the other day. I'm like, all right. So consider the same thing: shrink it down from a kennel, shrink it down to the place, and then control their food intake. Like, if you want to interact with me, especially with the dogs that are dickheads, if you interact with me, you got it. If you want to eat, buddy, you can't eat me. So that it usually takes a couple of days, and they're like, oh, okay. Well, like, so, but he started coming to me for like confirmation. And the female we had, Shiloh, she does the same thing. And it's like, and what it comes down to, and their owners are more so Shiloh's owners than Taz's owners, but Shiloh's owners mean well. They really miss her, like they're dog parent people, which is fine. I'm glad that dogs are well cared for. Like, I love it. But inadvertently, what my thing was about was people inadvertently confirming or reinforcing bad behavior or like mindsets in dogs where they're like, fuck, this is scary, save me. And then the human becomes a savior, and then anybody gets near it, then it becomes a resource guarding problem, right? So they view them as the resource, and then nobody can get fucking near them, and they're like, oh, he's protective. I'm like, yeah, that's not what that is. No. like yeah, you got this all wrong, because the dog is not protective over me. He didn't give a fuck about me. Like, he does, because I give him stuff. Like, I give him freedom and I give him food, but I don't give him, I'll pet him, but I'll only pet him like if I down him, and then he does that whole Sphinx thing, and then when he rolls over on his hip, especially in public, I'll count to 20, and then I'll call him to me. I'm like, come here, buddy. And then I'll pet him. I'll reward like that. But this whole shit about like, I'm scared and start panicking and then turn to you. Well, he didn't do it, Shiloh. And I'm like, we're not doing that shit. And so that's what kind of like what it was about. And I texted Taz's owners, and I was like, because she had the owner of Taz like had a problem leaving him there. She was really upset, and she didn't want to leave him. She misses him. she texted me. She's like, in the longest time my husband and I've been married, it's the first time we haven't had a dog in the house. I'm like, I know, it'll be fine. So he, I kind of prepped her and I was like, yeah, you may have to deal with, being okay with not like praising him and I said in my post, I was like, and canine handlers is one of the things that we see all the time. Dudes that constantly just say, good boy, good boy. And I'm like, would you shut up? Like, no, he's not being good. Like, it's a terrible bite. That's not good. No, that is not good. Shut the fuck up. And then inevitably they do it on body cam. And then some asshole attorney is like, oh, you're more concerned about the dog than the well-being of the suspect that they're biting. And it shows like a lack of disregard for their fucking, and I'm like, well, I mean, rather than what we teach our guys, and you teach them the same thing, like we say, help me get you cuffed up and I'll take the dog off. Help me get you cuffed and I'll take the dog off over and over again. Or give me your hands and I'll take the dog off. Show me your hands, I'll take the dog off. And they get used to saying, because they get used to saying it all the time. We had one where the dog handler couldn't even see the dog, and he's like, "Good boy." I'm like, "How the fuck do you know? Like, he can be like, well, you don't even know what he's doing."
Licking his nuts.
Yeah, I'm like, shut up. Like, stop talking to him. Nobody cares what you think anyway. So, like, nobody cares. The dog sure shit doesn't care. He's not even here. So that just kind of like struck a chord with me, because I'm constantly saying that when dudes are like, "Oh, good boy," and I look at him like, really? No, he's not good. Stop. Like, no.
Talk way less, people. Way less.
Speaking of talking less, you going to introduce our guest?
Of course. Yeah, we're good. We're going now. So we missed our guest before when we did the Australian series. So our guy reached out to him, get him on, and we're super stoked to have him. It's it's Wednesday here, so it's Thursday morning, I think, over there, if I'm right. Correct. And our guest, a lot of you know him on Instagram as K9 Steve, K9_Steve. He's got a dog, Guge, which is a fucking fantastic dog name, I think. I would have all kinds of nicknames for that dog. But and if you go to YouTube, this is one of the first times I've seen him with a shirt on, because his Instagram is, got a lot of shirtless pics, but he has the look. So welcome, K9 Steve Moharic. How are you, buddy?
I'm really good. Thanks for that intro, mate. It's an absolute honor to be here. I was telling you earlier that when I was working, I used to listen to you guys all the time. I've been a bit disconnected now, but we took a lot of good, or I took a lot of good information from your show. And being in Australia, we're very isolated. We don't get to attend all the conferences and everything. So we actually get linked up with a lot of our subject matter experts when we're facing problems through platforms like this. That's how we find them. That's how we hit them up. That's how we bring them out to Australia, or we link up and get info from them. So don't underestimate the power of the platform. You guys are doing good things. So thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on, man. It's good. I'm able to learn a lot from watching people on videos and reading some things they say. Some people struggle with that. They actually have to do it, and then you talk them through, or you do it and then they follow, like in person. So those who can learn from listen to a podcast, which is easy. Ted and I talk about it all the time. I'll listen to like Bradshaw or somebody and go, oh yeah. I'm going to give that a try. Because I'm still always learning from new things, from new people. And I'll tag some of my trainers in a video, like say Rigney will put something up that I do and I tell my people, but I'm not the subject matter expert within my 50-mile range.
50-mile rule.
Yeah, right. I'm just the idiot who comes in a grumpy mood all the time. So I'm like, well, then listen to him. So But anyways, appreciate you coming on. I'd like to go at, like we usually do, kind of talk about growing up and how you got into the military. You had a different route than a lot of other folks.
I did. So just, I guess, a really quick recap on who I am and where I'm at now is, I guess my first sort of thing, I was an athlete. I went off the path and I got into the criminal world down in Melbourne. I found redemption in the military. I made special forces, got a Green Beret, became a commando. I deployed a few times as a assaulter, and then I specialized as an attack dog handler, which is where I met Guge. We were teamed together, worked together for 2 and a bit years before he was injured, retired into my care, came home with me. And then I retired shortly after that. And I guess where I'm at now is I've got Guge just living a life of producing wholesome content on social media, and I'm enjoying doing that. I like to represent a positive side of the special forces, something that people don't see. And, underneath that sort of relationship, I'm promoting a healthy lifestyle, a healthy mindset, accountability, and responsible pet ownership as well. And that's where I'm at now. Is I've just started training pet dogs, and I'm working with a friend who owns Master of Puppies here on the Gold Coast, Will. He's setting up a training facility / daycare / kenneling facility, and we're working on opening that, getting that all sorted out. So
Nice.
here we are.
Yeah, doing Ted and I talk about it all the time, doing the and both of us, what I want to say, resisted the pet stuff for a long time, but
I still do.
Right. He just does 12 at a time, but he's resisting it. But it's it did make me a better trainer, overall, especially. I think I was a pretty decent e-collar trainer. But using it on pet dogs and things has made me even better, a little bit more finesse,
Yeah.
And I learned from a lot of other folks on it. But so growing up, I don't want to really get into the specifics of the criminal stuff you did, but
no, we won't. But I'll go through some of it just to give people a timeline, I guess, and also it defines my motivations to join the army and what sort of triggered all that.
Right.
So, I guess I'll have to preface it, because otherwise my mum will kill me, and let you guys know that I do have really, really good parents. Just middle class, hardworking. Dad was a Yugoslavian immigrant. Mum was from Dutch background. He was a plumber. Mum was a nurse. They looked after us, gave me really, really good values. So what I chose to do with my life is definitely not a reflection of their parenting. So starting, I guess I grew up down in Melbourne, which is Melbourne and Sydney here, our two biggest cities. I was a gifted endurance athlete sort of growing up, and that progressed into doing triathlons in my sort of mid to late teens, and I had a somewhat successful career at that, getting sponsorship and I guess defining myself as an elite athlete. But sort of coming up to the end of school, I finished school in 2001, and I was very much burning out as an athlete. And that was something that I thought I was going to continue on forever. But as most people that put that effort in those sort of years, just you put other things on in the background, and you're not living your life, and you tend to burn out. So that was me. I left school. I left home at 18 as well. Went out on my own without much direction. With much sort of idea of what I wanted to do, and I'm definitely on a path of trying to prove my worth as a man, sort of foolishly, that immature masculine mindset, that getting into fights and doing all that sort of stuff. And I gravitated towards the party scene in Melbourne. Now, it was specifically the rave scene in Melbourne, which is the electronic sort of music scene, which was huge back then. And that was a world that was full of, I guess, social misfits and people that didn't know their place, and sort of gravitated towards that world. And underneath that, or on top of that, was quite a large criminal element. And, I wasn't much into the music and dancing, but I was very much into making friends and networking.
Girls.
Yeah, that too.
Rave chicks.
Yeah, a lot of that. So I found myself sort of gravitating towards a sort of criminal element there. And, I was doing my thing within that world, and I got noticed by somebody within that sort of element there who was quite connected and quite feared there. And he noticed me, and I didn't know, he tested me a bunch of times, and I passed those tests, and he sort of gave me the keys into a world which I really had no business being in. There's in Australia, there's 3 passports into that sort of world, that sort of echelon of criminal activity, and it's family based. There's a lot of sort of ethnic based groups, especially down in Melbourne, but most of Australia. It's the areas people grew up in, and I just grew up in I didn't grow up in one of the rougher areas in Melbourne. And the other thing is jail time. A lot of the connections are made through guys going to jail, proving themselves in jail and doing all that. So I didn't have any of that. I got my way in just being, I guess, who I am, being dependable, having a good reputation, being someone that wasn't a pushover, that sort of thing. And yeah, I very much was a tourist in that world, and things really escalated for me in that world quite quickly. You know, it wasn't long sort of where it was just sort of all fun and games to things were quite violent, quite dangerous. The people that I was hanging around with were people that had serious pasts, and they were people that had serious family and all that sort of stuff. And I somehow managed to keep my head above water with these people. And it taught me a lot about, I guess, human nature and dealing with people. There was a lot of challenges within that space. A lot of times where I had to really stand up for myself when I was, you know, very, very scared, very scared for my safety, I guess. So we're in that world, things escalated. That bloke that brought me in, me and him basically became best friends, I guess, and got to a point where he and I moved in together. Now, he was on parole for a previous, he'd been in jail just before he met me. He got busted with some money a few weeks before this particular incident, and it was not long after I moved in, but we had a task force hit our house, and they could not give two shits that I was there. I was there with my partner at the time, who I'd then go on to marry and unfortunately divorce. But we were both there when they came through, and they were just after him. All they wanted was him, and they found enough within his space to take him back to jail, and that's what they did. Very fortunate situation for me, just that point there. I mean, I wouldn't be sitting here if things went the other way. But he went into jail. He got locked up for, I think he was doing a 3-year sentence at the time. And he was a bloke that he was running everything that he was doing based on fear, and didn't have much respect underneath that fear. So he went to jail. Everyone abandoned him. Everyone that owed him money, all that sort of stuff. Cool. As what happens. You know, jail is a very, very grim place. You know, it's nothing to be to romanticize or anything like that. These guys, they get abandoned. You know, and it's survival of the fittest in there as well. But so he was put in. I supported him like a best friend. You know, as I said, people get abandoned in jail. Family abandons everything. I was visiting him as much as I could, taking phone calls, dealing with all the idiots that he met and he wanted me to go meet up with when they come out, and all that sort of rubbish. You know, go on putting bets on for him at the TAB, our horse racing thing. Like, a lot of them are gamblers. They get big gambling addictions in there. So yeah, while he was in, I guess I sort of got more of a name for myself within that sort of world. And I guess it sort of got out of my control in a sense. You know, I did think I was in control at the time, but, you know, looking back, it was very out of my control, and I was just lucky in a lot of sense. And well, during the visits, I was probably feeding him a bit too much information, and he developed some resent for me, especially since he had nothing sort of to come out to. And I think he was very aware of that. So not long before sort of he got released, some things happened to me where some people that I met through him, which were very much more loyal to him than they were with me, they sort of set me up, not in a guns in your face sort of thing, but just taking advantage of my trust and that sort of thing. And it was too aligned with him being released, and I was very suspicious of what was happening. He got released and we moved into a house together, and you know, my suspicions were correct. And I was out one day, and he took some things off me, or took some money off me when I was out, which, you know, it broke my heart at the time, because this was a bloke I looked after like he was my brother. You know, I did a lot for him when he was in prison. The mistake I made, I was probably just telling him a bit too much, I think, you know, and thinking that he had that same level of respect for me. It's a very cruel environment, which is what I sort of learnt. You know, you can play by the rules and you can play by the code, but these people don't give a shit, especially if you're a tourist like me. I was very aware that I got the sense that if something was going to happen, I was the one being thrown under the bus. So I decided at that point to exit from that environment. I left those people without sort of telling them, and pushed to a different area of Melbourne. I was still involved with what I was doing, but I distanced myself from all those people that I considered, I guess, really hardcore career criminals within that scene, that were too high vis, were too high risk, were crazy. You know, I saw and witnessed them do some some wild things over very, very little. You know, I think the difference between me and those guys is I think when they're raised in such a harsh environment without support and without love, there tends to be this part of their brain that doesn't evaluate risk in the same way, and they emotionally sort of fly off the handle, or they think that pride has more to do with than logic in a situation, and they tend to react very, very badly, which is why a lot of these guys are in and out of jail all the time. But I distanced myself from them. At that point, someone from that sort of group contacted me and let them know that they were treating me like a snitch. So basically saying that leaving is the same as snitching. And in Australia, the worst thing, it's funny for this show, but the worst thing you can be called is a dog, which I never understood because I absolutely love dogs.
Right.
But that's what they were calling me. And to me, that's a very, very serious threat then. And I had to prepare and sort of act accordingly and get ready for that. I was living with my partner at the time, and we sort of separated, that we weren't living in the same house and that sort of stuff. Because one of the guys that did message me, you know, he was a murderer, and you know, I mean, a convicted murderer. He got done for a heinous crime. And you know, at the time, it was when I first met him, it was sold to me in sort of a dispute amongst criminals, but it wasn't that whatsoever. It was a really bad robbery that he did, and he went very high level with that. And but when he messaged me, I was like, shit, you know, this is serious. This is serious. So I prepared myself, and I did what I needed to do to make myself feel safe. Within the sort of the years that followed, it sort of went quiet. Sometimes something would pop up where a threat would come through. But for the most part, I sort of just started to take it as sort of empty threats, that they were just going and doing their own thing, and I was doing my own thing. But within that time, I sort of really started to question my own morals and values. You know, as I sort of started this with, I wasn't raised like that. I was given opportunities. I was given an education. This initially was a greed thing, and then it was very much ego. I know it's been said by a lot of people in that world, it's not the money and stuff that keeps people in there. It's that big fish, small pond mentality of just having people suck up to you, make you feel like you're somebody, you're fucking nobody, but they make you feel, and it is addictive. It is a drug, you know? And I started to question what I was doing with my life, what I was doing for my partner at the time, which I wanted to marry. You know, my family had become aware of this sort of stuff. You know, my mum, I guess the big point for her was I got caught up in something during a jail visit, and I was banned from all jails in Australia, and that led, I went to my mum's house. So
Lord.
Yeah, she led to sort of, that was the sort of tipping point for her to say, what are you doing, you know? And obviously rumors and stuff started to filter through. And on that, you know, I had nothing to do with what happened. It was just an extremely bad situation. And eventually I beat the corrections department to have my ban lifted. And obviously next time I visited jail, there was a massive welcoming party for me, as there should be. But it was a shit situation. And anyway, I was looking sort of at myself. I was questioning what I was doing. I really wasn't proud of the man that I'd become. And I knew I could do better. I knew I had it in me to be a more valuable member of society. So I started looking for a way out of it before it was too late. And it was very close to getting to that point of it being too late. There was a couple of violent incidences during that period where it really could have gone either way. You know, one of them was stopped by me taking a hit to my pride and thinking I had to prove something to someone, and I was prepared to bring a level of violence that would have got me put in jail for a while, and he knocked me out before I could start it. So I lost that one, but it was a blessing. He did me a favor. So I started looking at my options. You know, I needed something that was going to take me away from that world completely. You know, I couldn't just go, cool, I'm going to, you know, get a job here, blah, blah. And through that period, I was doing odd labor jobs and stuff like that. But I was like, I couldn't just, you know, go work at McDonald's or whatever it be, because the temptations, I think, would be too strong for me. I was honest with myself and knew that I had to leave the state. And I never had any inkling to join the military. I was always fascinated. I grew up on action movies and all that sort of stuff. And I was very, fascinated by that world, but it was never sort of something I thought about. And I just thought about it, and I opened the website and I started looking through it, and it just spoke to me, and specifically we have a program here in Australia called the Special Forces Direct Recruitment Scheme. I started reading about that, and it just lit this fire in my belly that reminded me of like competition of triathlons and pushing myself harder and everything. And it just seemed to me like the perfect way to get out of my situation, to completely disconnect from temptations, to completely disconnect from anybody that might see me leaving as something that they're offended by and they feel the need to intervene. But most importantly, it was something that was going to put me into a world of service. I was very conscious of what I felt was a karmic debt that I'd built up, that I needed to repay society, I guess, in some way that was going to be beneficial for not just me and my family, but for, I guess, the country as a whole, to do something to be proud of, to do something for other people. So in about 2008, I set down the path of applying for that program. And I approached it exactly like I approached the street environment. I thought the best way to do this would be to get known by everyone as much as I could. So, we had to do a fitness test to get in. You only had to do one, but I did one every single month for 12 months, just so I met as many people as possible. I showed them that I was really, really committed to this process, that I was all in. And I was ready to give it all. They stopped me by about month 7 and said, "Hey man, you don't need to keep coming here and doing these fitness tests. We get it. You've done one. That was enough." So I was successful in going into the Special Forces Direct Recruitment Scheme. So that was basically a fast track program into the commandos. In Australia, we have 2 Special Forces units. One being SAS over on the West Coast in Perth, and we have commandos here on the East Coast down in Sydney. So the program was to get into the commandos. Basically, you go through basic training as normal. You go through your infantry training as normal. Instead of going out to an infantry battalion, you go straight onto an advanced infantry course, which is run by commandos. And it is basically I think it was a 4-week smash course of just information, while doing field time and getting your skills up and all that. So basically designed to give you the skills that you would learn in 2 years of battalion life in 4 weeks. And they do that very well. So I went into the army. So basic training was just such a shock to my system. I was in a world where I thought I was somebody, and I ended up in the army where, here I am getting stripped of everything and broken back down. And, coming to that realization that I'm an absolute nobody. And there was a point sort of 2 weeks in where I was really crushed. I went to the range and, picked up a rifle for the first time and was, shooting a rifle, trying to do a grouping serial. And I was shocking on a rifle. And I'm here thinking, shit, I've walked away from a world that I was, somewhat good at. And here I am into this new world where I've given everything. I've given it up. I can't go back, and I suck at this job.
Yeah.
so I was sort of, I was broken. I pretty much rang who was my fiance at the time. I was almost in tears, just like, what have I done? I've chosen an exit strategy. It's not going to work. I'm not even going to pass. I'm going to fail. And she just talked some sense into me, stay the path. And I made really good friends during basic training. There was probably, I think, 55 odd recruits that was part of this Special Forces Direct Recruitment Scheme for that year. Of those, probably 15 realistically had a chance. It was very much, I think, the program set up to trap some people into going into the infantry, as it was to get some really good soldiers from different areas in life. And that's what that program does. It brings in guys that have different experiences into a unit that really values those. So finished basic training. So I pulled my pants up, finished basic training, got through infantry training, got onto the AIT course, and that was massive sort of realization to, it was sort of run like a selection course as well. There was a really hardcore PT that was ex-British Royal Marines. He was running the PT, and if you know anything about Royal Marines, you know they're not afraid of bastardization and you know, bullying people, getting people's faces, and doing extremely hard work as well.
They like to do fucking push-ups. I know that.
Yeah, mate. This guy's warm-ups for his PT were worse than his sessions. You know,
Wow,
just
excellent.
hardcore stuff. And you could tell what was happening. These guys were sort of figuring out who, you know, they didn't give a shit about basic training and infantry training. They gave a shit about what you produced on that course there, who you were. And they set it up that they were really going to push you as far as they could to see who would break and who would take it, who had the fitness levels and who didn't, who had the mental capacity to do it and who didn't. It was a full-on course. And throughout that course, you know, by the end of it, I think we only had 15 or whatever that went on to selection from the end of that. A lot of the guys would just took themselves out of that course. They weren't so much. A lot of guys sort of got booted off, but a lot just took themselves off with realizing that, you know, it probably wasn't for them at the moment. At the time, they probably had an excuse for it. You know, I got bullied or whatever, or they didn't let me finish this or whatever. But at the end of the day, I think if those blokes are honest with themselves, it's probably because if they did that, it's because they didn't have what it takes. So that was a massive eye opener. You know, to get smashed by the very guys that you're trying to join, you know, it was very different experience for me, but I understood what was happening. I got onto selection in 2010. I had an unsuccessful attempt on my first one. I just didn't prepare properly. I think for me, and I was thinking about this yesterday, I think for me, it was that I felt like I'd achieved so much already to that point that just getting into the army and being where I was from who I was, I think I rested on that, and I was happy to sit at probably a lower tier than where I should have been. But you know, everything happens for a reason, and I ended up, so coming off selection, I was at the Special Forces training school there for a while. I thought I'd be able to stay around there for 12 months and get back on the next course. Didn't happen. Eventually, they're like, yeah, Steve, you know, you're a cool guy and whatever, but piss off, you need to go join a battalion. So I went to the 3rd Battalion 3RAR, which was a parachute regiment at that stage. I figured going there, that was a sort of battalion that had the reputation for being, I guess, the harder one, doing, you know, air quotes. It was, it was sort of that bridging the gap, what I thought, between the other infantry units and special forces, which wasn't really true. They're all of the same standard. They're all of a really good standard here in Australia. Went to 3RAR. So on that selection course, I think 5 guys passed who were all very good friends of mine. They went straight to 2nd Commando Regiment while I went to the Infantry Battalion. At that time, those were on the same base here in Sydney. So, you know, I was doing infantry things while looking over the fence and seeing my friends do special forces things. But I got pretty comfortable at 3RAR. Again, I slipped into that sort of mentality. I was one of the fitter blokes and you know, one of the bigger blokes, and I sort of just rested on that. I was quite happy having a bit of respect there and getting along with everybody. But you know, at that time, they were going through a shift where they were losing their wings. Special Forces was taking over the parachute capability completely. And they're also getting moved to a garrison sort of city or town in Townsville in Queensland, with another 2 infantry units. So the morale there was really, really low. And the chance to, I guess, the incentive to work hard wasn't really there. There was no real reason to sort of push to do better there. I didn't feel that anyway. Now, there was a point where I was doing guard. So we used to have a guard hut at the front of the base to let cars in and out. Doing guard there, it's very regimental. You've got to like wear your hat and be dressed properly, and there's all rules. Now, one of the rules is if you're sweeping gutters, you're not allowed to be talking on your phone. So I was sweeping gutters, and I got a phone call from one of my mates who was a commando, and he was calling me from Afghanistan. And he's telling me about Afghan, you know, obviously with operational security, he can only tell me so much, but, you know, he's telling me the gist of it, that, you know, they're getting in gunfights, they're doing this and that, they're having really, really impressive battle space effects, and they're really doing the stuff that you see on the recruiting posters and all that sort of stuff. So while I'm on this phone call, I just hear this voice yelling, "Oi, oi!" And I look up and I see this sergeant, and he was an overweight sergeant, you know, didn't represent the uniform well. He wasn't known as a good sergeant. And he goes, "Get the fuck off your phone. You are not allowed to be on your phone on guard." And I'm just here on one ear, I've got a Special Forces Commando. Another ear, I've got this low performing infantry sergeant yelling at me for being on my fucking phone. So apologies for my swearing, but
it's all right.
Yeah, I'm Australian. It's going to happen. I don't think I've slipped the C word out yet, have I?
No, you can say that. It's cultural.
Yeah,
it's cultural.
Good.
You can
good.
say
I think
it.
I will. I think I will further down when I talk about some of the boys I've met in the US in a good way. But anyway, here I am at this point. You know, I thought I was quite comfortable being where I was at 3RAR, and I'm getting yelled at by this son. I'm like, "Steve, what the fuck are you doing? You know, you should be there with those boys." So I put my application back in to do selection again in 2012. Again, I gave everything to it. I prepared like a fucking madman. I got back into my zone of, training like a triathlete, basically. And it was good that I had a good reputation at 3RAR. They did give me space to train as much as I wanted. Then 3RAR got a trip to Afghanistan, and in Australia, when trips come up, boys do not pass up trips. You know, you're desperate to be on trips because there's just not a lot of options, especially in infantry during your time. You might only get a couple. It's not like the US where guys are going back to back to back to back. When there's a trip offered, guys take it. I got put on this trip with 3RAR while I was just about to put my application in, and I spoke to my sort of hierarchy. Said, "Yeah, look, I don't want to do the trip. I want to do selection." They were supportive of that, and they understood why I wanted to do that. I put my application in. I think the CO of the unit wrote on the application that he was giving up a trip to Afghanistan in order to do selection like it was a bad thing. But I think me as a Special Forces soldier, if I was looking at that piece of paper, I would go, "Shit, man, cool. This dude wants to be here," you know? So I put my application in. I went through all the testing again, you know, the aptitude, the psych testing, the fitness testing, and everything that you have to do here in order to get a spot on selection. There's a lot of guys apply. This is the peak of Afghanistan war. And our Special Forces, especially commandos, were getting awesome jobs. So everyone wanted to go over there. There was a huge number of experienced infantry guys that were trying to get into the Special Forces. So a lot of guys apply for selection. They don't get put on selection. So I was given the opportunity to do selection, and off I went to selection. And, in my head, this time I had everything to lose. If I didn't pass, I was going back to a battalion which was 60% deployed. And I was moving up to Queensland to an area, Townsville, which I didn't really want to live at. So this time it was sort of do or die. And I had a different appreciation for what they did at this point as well. You know, I had that kick in the ass of experiencing battalion time and saying, "Hey, you know, it's cool. There's definitely awesome soldiers, capable soldiers in the battalion, but I want to do something more." You know, to me, it was like I was playing really good basketball in some sort of semi-professional league, and my mates were playing in the NBA. So that's what I saw it as, and I went to selection with that mindset. The only way I was coming off was a real horrible injury, and I was prepared, I was fit, I was in the right mindset, and I got through it that time. And after selection here, so that the selection course itself goes for back then I think it was like 6 weeks, and it's full on. It's definitely one of the harder ones I think within the world. You are disconnected from everything in your life for that entire period, living out in rural New South Wales. You go through a demarcation period of no food and no sleep for 3 to 4 days. Putting through extremely physical tasks that whole time. That's the part where we lose the most guys is that sleep and food deprivation, because that whole time during that course, you've got a piece of paper in your pocket, which is your withdraw own request form. So whenever it gets too tough, all you've got to do is go up to these tables they have set up at every miserable stand that you're doing. If you're out field pushing a fully loaded truck in the mud for 4 hours nonstop, they're sitting out there drinking coffee at their desk. If you're in the pool doing a smash session in the pool for 4 hours where you are just in and out of the water, holding a push-up position on the side of the water, in and out of the water, just miserable stuff like that, in the shallow end, holding the rifle above your head, just stuff to break people. They're sitting there at the end of the pool on their desk, ready for withdraw own request forms. And you will see guys in big numbers. You start off in a section, you get split up into sections of like 12 guys. By the end of it, you'll have, 2 or 3 guys in your section because everyone's gone. And, for the sociopath in us or the psychopath in us, every time someone sort of goes up and puts their hands up, you get fueled by that. You're like, I'm one step closer, one man closer to getting through to the end, and there's a navigational phase, solo navigation, weapons phases and all this stuff, field phases, and it's all through the whole time. There's sleep deprivation and everything as well. And, you're getting smashed physically. So it's a very, very full on course. So you get through that, and straight off that, you go into basically, like back then it was like 8 months of what we call a reinforcement cycle. So during that phase, you're doing all your, we're an amphibious unit. So there's an amphib course, there's an urban combat course, there's a close quarter fighting course, there's a hand-to-hand combat course, roping course, working with helicopters, parachute course, all that sort of stuff. And it's just back to back to back. You'll lose a bunch of guys through that period as well. Depends where they are in that process. They might be able to come back the next year to start where they came off. So you finish that, and you get a Green Beret. And back then, you're pretty much going straight to Afghanistan as well. It was sort of, you deployed, we came off, a big group of us came off the reinforcement cycle, went straight to Bravo Company, which was deploying in like a few months after that. So we pretty much came off, had some time with our family, and then we started our prep in the desert to get ready to go off to the desert. And in 2013, I deployed to Afghanistan as part of the Special Operations Task Group to go take on the Taliban. So over in Afghanistan, we sort of had 2 mission profiles over there. One of them was working with some of your guys, DEA fast teams. I think they're non-existent anymore.
No.
But we had DEA fast operators attached to us, and we would go out and hit Taliban drug labs, so taking out their sources of income. Really sort of hectic jobs when they first started, until the Taliban, obviously learning our tactics, started just filling them with IEDs. And what they would do was do cook-ups during the day and then rig everything up at night for when we went and hit it. Or they would just do very small cook-ups during the day, smaller places, and then still rigging up places at night when we hit it. So during my trip, there was a lot of dealing with IEDs on those sort of jobs. The other side of that was we did, I guess, clearances of Taliban-held villages, and we were doing that in areas where these were hardened Taliban warfighters, going down to Helmand province and stuff like that. We were operating in areas where not everybody was operating, and my unit, I can't take credit for this because I only a small part of it, but my unit 2 Commando, we really made a name for ourselves in Afghanistan by being a extremely effective warfighting unit for the small size that we are, extremely capable. And we took a ton of Taliban fighters and some of their hardest fighters out of the battle space. So we sort of built our reputation there. We were working alongside US, so we were supported by US air crews, so we don't deploy our helicopters and stuff. So all our missions were flying in on US choppers, US Chinooks and US Blackhawks, supported by US Apaches. Our Medivac system was US. You know, a lot of our platforms in the sky doing the reconnaissance and all that were US as well. You know, and our guys would help them, would sit in with them and help them. So we have a really, really good relationship with US forces, especially US SOF. So Afghanistan, we took some big wins and some heavy losses as well. You know, we had a bomb go off on that one of the one of the drug labs that took out one of our blokes, and also a bloke from 75th that we had attached to us. Both of them. So our bloke didn't return to work, but he's okay. And the ranger, he returned to work, and he's, I think, still operating in
Nice.
US. I think, yeah. So he's an awesome dude. I won't say his name. I don't want to, you know, get anyone in trouble or breach anyone's OPSEC or anything like that. But yeah, he was a good dude. He is a good dude. What else? We sort of we had a helicopter sort of crash hard landing, which took out one of our snipers with a brain injury. He never returned to work either. Then we had an incident one day. Sorry, we had another incident. One of the boys got shot in the head, in his helmet, and in his shoulder. He sort of returned to work a few years later in a sort of reduced capacity. Then we had one day where we got drawn into a pretty heavy gunfight. We had 3 teams, my team and 2 other teams on one side of the river, and some other teams on, I think, another 2 teams on the other side. But they obviously couldn't come over to us. The river was just a massive river. So it was sort of our 3 teams operating on one side, pretty disconnected by a considerable distance. One of the teams got into a gunfight, and their team leader got hit in the leg really, really badly. So the other team, my team and another team, went sprinting over there to go assist them. On the way over there, the other team that was running in, they got hit by an ambush. So they got drawn into another gunfight. That team of Taliban fighters ended up moving into a compound and barricading themselves into a compound, a big thick-walled mud compound, probably like internally the size of 2 shipping containers. But I don't know if you know the walls over there, you know, you're not shooting through walls and stuff over there.
Right.
They're ultimate cover. So they barricaded themselves in there. There was 6 fighters, and I guess 3 teams got drawn into that gunfight then, while handling a Casevac as well. So that was pretty much almost close enough to touch them. You know, that was fighting through a doorway. These guys weren't giving up. They were hardened fighters, and they were very, very heavily armed. And although we had them pinned, we couldn't achieve a break-in. So unfortunately, we lost a bloke there, where one of the team leaders, Cameron Baird, who earned himself a Victoria Cross in the process, which is Australia's highest military honour. I guess it's like your Medal of Honour, I guess. Is that he got that, you know, he died, you know, and he earned that through that process. But he... in that doorway, it was sort of a bit of a stalemate. No one was sort of making any headway, and he decided to sort of do what he could to draw the fire by moving across that doorway so guys could come in beside him. And he did it a couple of times, and unfortunately ended up taking a round to the head, and he died there. And you know, obviously when that sort of stuff happens, the fighting doesn't stop. There's not everyone pause. We've got a you know, KIA, and we need to deal with it. You know, the guys just keep on rolling. And one of my biggest takeaways from that day, actually, because I was a machine gunner. So I had a belt-fed machine gun on that job, and I was the only one on that job that had it. So I was put into a position just above that gunfight, probably 50 to 100 meters away, facing back down the green belt, just in case they had a reinforcement. So that was their most likely approach. So I'm facing down the green belt, and I was in that position where, listening to my comms, I could really hear what was going on without having the stress of being directly involved. So I was consuming all that, what was happening. And you know, I remember when the call came on the radio that you know, the team leader 3-1 was KIA. It was sort of a moment's pause, and then everything just kept going again. You know, that the guy underneath him just stepped up, filled his spot. Gunfight keeps going, you know, and in the background of that, guys are now organizing a second Casevac to get him out of there. So, it's real over there. And when shit like that happens, it doesn't just stop. There's no pause. That day as well, it was like 50 odd degrees Celsius, which is, I don't know, what's that, 110 or something?
I don't know,
very,
it's hot.
very
Yeah.
hot,
Hot.
and it was guys, had guys going down with heat and stuff as well. And we ended up, achieving the break-in, and we finished that gunfight and did what we need to do, made our exfil, got out of there. Unfortunately, yeah, we took that casualty, and that wasn't the end of the trip. We still had more war fighting to go, and there's no time to mourn and stuff over there. You just got to get on with it. Guys process when they come home, and losing that bloke, he was a pivotal member of my platoon, probably the most important person when it comes to leadership within our platoon. He was just a guy that was motivated for the right reasons. He was an awesome operator, a fair man, but a fierce gunfighter. And he was a bit of a superhero in our platoon. So losing him definitely made everyone feel very, very vulnerable. And, that gap in his leadership. And that same day, the other bloke that got shot was his best mate, another team leader, another massive guy in our platoon. So we lost 2 of our biggest team leaders out of the 4 team leaders that we have. And there was a massive gap in leadership that took a long time for my platoon to recover from. This stuff just doesn't happen and we move on. With small units, there's gaps that take a long time to be filled, and especially when you've got guys that are so unique, and so strong and so inspirational to other people. It takes a while for someone to fill that gap. It was a good and a bad trip, I guess. We came home from that. I went to domestic counterterrorism. So that was 2014. So over in Australia, we have a unit called the Tactical Assault Group, which the commandos run here in Sydney. Perth, the SAS, they have a sort of an offshore recovery sort of aspect of that, where we handle all the domestic counterterrorism. So what we are is a last line of defense for our government. We don't have SWAT teams over here. Each state has a specialist police unit, who are trained in special tactics, special weapons. They've got dog capabilities now and all that sort of stuff. And if it's above their capability, that's when we step in. And we obviously don't go in unless it's necessary, because we're not going in there to make friends. We go in very, very heavy-handed. Our mission is just to save the lives of the hostages, and we will do that as fast and as hard as possible. We are making a mess. We're using explosions and using explosives, and we're going in hard. Hostages are going to have their feelings hurt because we've got a bigger picture and we need to get there as fast as we can. So it's a very, very good experience to go onto the Tactical Assault Group. That is, I guess, about as elite, or it is as elite as you can come in Australia. You are doing all the money. This was back when, terrorism was a bigger threat than COVID. So we had all the money thrown at us. You are going through thousands and thousands of rounds each week. We are doing all the cool shit, jumping out of helicopters, roping down skyscrapers, where we're doing exercises, shutting down train stations and sports stadiums and stuff like that. You're doing all the really fast action hero sort of stuff there. So I spent my time, initially I was a method of entry operator, which is an explosives guy. It's a very, very stressful job. Basically making shaped charges, specific charges under very restricted timeframes. And when you're on the Tactical Assault Group, you're on a massively reduced notice to move your whole year that you're on there. You have periods where you be able to go on leave and they'll say 50% manning and stuff, but it's a very, very high demanding job. You don't really get to do much. You've got to be, when you get called, you've got to come to work straight away, and you've got to be mounted on the back of vehicles within a certain time frame. So it's full on, but you learn how to become a pretty capable assaulter during that time, because you are doing so much CQB, room combat, entering buildings, all that sort of stuff. So you start to know how to read your team really, really well and move without becoming a hindrance to anybody, and knowing where you should be at all times, and becoming a very good reactive shooter as well. You know, getting your shooting times. We do a lot of range time up against the beeper and all that sort of stuff. And then, so yeah, that was an also, sorry, then I finished that up as a fast driver. And to me, that's the best job. Fast driver is the best job in the commandos because you basically are getting paid to drive we have these SUVs, you know, most tactical units have them, that you're basically the driver in your team. So you get to go away and go to racetracks and stuff like that and spend days on racetrack learning how to drive fast and learning how to drive fast in crazy ways. And it's being, I'm a car guy. I'm a car guy. You know, I've got, you know, down in the garage, I've got a lowrider, I've a 63 Impala down there. I've had all sorts of cars, and being a car guy, man, I loved that job. I really did. And so I finished up 2014. I had a really good experience. You know, at that point, my company was super bonded as well. We'd come from Afghanistan together, fighting together, and then doing that domestic counterterrorism together. We were a really bonded company, and I really enjoyed my time there, and I've got really great memories from that period. 2015, we got involved with the war against ISIS in Iraq. I deployed in 2015 as a second rotation of Australian Special Forces in Iraq. We went over there with really high hopes that we were going to go take the fight to ISIS. Unfortunately, when we got there, it was a very political situation in Iraq. You know, Iran and the US were both backing Iraq. There's obviously tension between those two two countries. Yeah. So basically,
allegedly,
yeah. You know, look, my understanding of the battle space over there is inside the wire, the training, and also the control of the airspace was the coalition. Outside the wire, it was Iranian led. So I was out at a base called Al Assad Air Base, which at the first Iraq war was, I think, 30,000 US troops. It was huge. You know, one of those bases with fucking dominoes and whatever, had a massive swimming pool, diving. Yeah, huge. But we got there, it was post-apocalyptic. It was abandoned. It was about, I think it was about 15 commandos, about 15 Navy SEALs. We were sent there. We were pretty much on the base. We had Marines that came over that supplied, so US Marines that were allowed to retaliate. You know, we would go to the front base to go get local workers to bring them in to do jobs, because we had to build our own base there as well. We had nothing. We had to hot wire machinery, hot wire old F trucks that US left after the first Iraq war. Everything we did, we had to do ourselves. It was lucky that we had some guys sent with us who had a plumbing background, electrician, that sort of stuff that helped us. Really, we were living out of tents, and we built a whole base out of what the US had left behind, which was pretty much everything. You know, we had hot wired generators running stolen air conditioning units and all that sort of stuff. It was really an experience. You know, it was cool when we first got there, because we'd go on adventures and we'd go looking for Saddam's gold. We'd go out to the bunkers and do all this, and there's got to be gold hidden here somewhere, but we didn't find any gold. So, you know, that was
that had been taken a long time ago.
Yeah, we realized that. You know, they had a warehouse there, the Iraqis on the base, that we called. So in Australia, we have a massive hardware chain called Bunnings Warehouse, where they're these huge warehouse where you go for everything you need, hardware, gardening, and blah, blah. So we called this place Bunnings Warehouse, and it was a huge warehouse that the Iraqis had filled with all the stuff that they'd pillaged when America had left. So all the stuff that they thought was of value. So you went in there, and it was just like TVs from 10 years ago, computers from 10 years ago, there was this mini golf course. I guess they had a mini golf thing set up there. This old machinery, everything outdated. But when we went in there, we realized that, look, anything of value on this base has been taken. There is not a scrap that's been left behind. It was funny. We all wanted to get into this place we called Bunnings, and the SEALs, they decided one night, because we hadn't got access, none of us got access. Everyone wanted to find out what was in this warehouse that was being guarded. And the SEALs, they broke in, they did some black ops and broke in there and got busted. And because of that, we were sort of told that we could come in invited. So thank you, SEALs. We went in there and we got to experience it. I love Navy SEALs. I love bullying them, and I love, you know, I've worked with them, or trained with them, I should say. And, you know, I've never met a bad SEAL. I've always enjoyed the banter between us. So, yeah, shout out to those boys. But anyway, Iraq was a bit of a for me, a demoralizing, I guess, trip. You know, I went over there to go war fighting, and that's why I joined a war fighting unit. We were stuck training Iraqi troops who really weren't that interested in fighting. They believed all the propaganda that ISIS was putting out, and ISIS was very successful with their propaganda. We felt it even in our countries with the stuff they were putting on social media, the fear campaigns they were running. They had people like, PR people putting this stuff out there. The beheadings and the torching of the torching of people. They put that stuff all over social media, and the Iraqi soldiers were very, very scared of ISIS, so much so that they believed in in legends and myths about them, and it was very hard to get them to really commit to war fighting against them. We'd watch them go out on missions and pretty much turn around at the first sort of sign of any sort of combat or whatever, just a few pot shots at them from a distance, and they're like, oh, it's a sniper, we've got to get out of here, and turn around. So eventually, through support we had a lot of support. A lot of our guys were helping the air assets, dropping bombs and all that sort of stuff. So they were doing that out of Baghdad. We had a huge effects doing that, dropping bombs, and through that, Iraqis sort of got the motivation to push forward and go out there and do some war fighting. But for me, it wasn't what I wanted to do. Going out and seeing ISIS fighters on the edge. So we had an entryway where we'd go let in these tradesmen and stuff, some local tradesmen or people that were, trading information for fuel or whatever they were doing. And you would see ISIS fighters just out there watching you, and, being that close to the enemy and knowing how psycho and how bad those people were, what they were doing. They would send rockets into our base because they knew that the air assets would watch us, and then they'd go and do whatever they wanted external to the base, going through and doing all their horrendous things that they did to the local population of Iraq. So it was what it was. I came back off that. I was I was in a space where I really wasn't in the mindset anymore. I was like, cool, I've done what I achieved. I've done what I wanted. I came here, I've got a Green Beret, I've done warfighting ops, I've got myself to a point where I think I'm one of the respected members here. No one was talking bad about me or anything. We don't really get feedback. I never heard anything bad, so that's good, I guess. And I was sort of looking at other options, and within that was looking at getting out of the military as well. And just so happened that a friend of mine who he was more senior than me, a couple of ranks above me. He actually took me through a lot of my training to become a commando. He was a soldier that I respected a lot. I liked the way that he soldiered. He was a product of the direct recruitment scheme as well. So he had that bit of he wasn't institutionalized, a bit more of a free thinker in our environment. And he said to me, hey man, I've got a dog here. Have you ever thought about doing dogs? And we didn't have a dog. We did have a dog capability, I guess. I saw it only a couple times during 2014, during some training exercises when I was on the tactical assault group. We had some dogs with us, but they weren't really, it was still very new. They weren't part of the companies yet. They were still trying to figure it out. We were very late adopters of the dog program. It probably arrived, I think, in 2012. 13-ish, and I don't think it became really part of the capability until my group of handlers sort of pushed it in 16. So he said to me, hey man, I've got a opportunity. Do you want to come do the dog course, the special operations military working handlers? Special operations military working dog handlers course. And I was like, yeah, shit, I like dogs. He's got, I've got this dog. I think he's going to suit you. He's a very, very hard dog, and he probably needs someone who's going to, respond to that, okay, and not have any fear working with him. And I think you should come down and meet him. So, I foolishly agreed that weekend to go in by myself and go meet this dog and take him for a walk. And having absolutely no experience with working dogs at all, I just thought I'd go in there, pick up his lead, take him for a walk. So I went in there on the weekends, went out by myself. I went into we have our own handlers, kennel area at the end of our base. I went in there, open the gate, walk down to the kennel, and here I am confronted by this dog, this 34-kilo Belgian Malinois that is just smashing the gate to get at me, spitting at me, lunging at me, barking, clawing, giving me every sort of behavior, telling me, do not come in this kennel. So being that I'd never,
anyway.
well, look, I'll tell you, being that I'd never had experience with dogs, I looked at him and said, yep, no, I'm not going in there, bro. See you later. And I turned around, I walked away, and I get to the end of the kennel bank. So he was sort of in the middle. I get to the end of the kennel bank to the gate, and I just stopped myself and internally said, Steve, what are you doing? I'm like, you are a commando, not a coward. Go back there and go take that dog for a fucking walk. So with all the fake courage that I could muster, I went in there and I put on my front and I opened the door, put his collar on, put his lead on, and I took him for a walk. And that was the day that Guge and my relationship started. That was the day that my career within the attack dog cell started. And, I went on that walk, and every single time Guge stopped or flinched, I paused and thought he was going to attack me, but we got through it.
Yeah, you get goosebumps every time, like, here it comes.
Yeah. I'd only ever handled pets, and this guy, the build up that he gave me was, this is a serious dog. And he was a very serious dog, so over here, I guess our process of becoming a handler is, in the perfect scenario, and I'm talking about back when I did, things have changed now, but in the perfect scenario, they were taking guys that had a bit of experience as assaulters first. They didn't want to get guys straight off the reinforcement cycle, fresh commandos, because you'd want guys picking up a lead that know how to read the battle space, know how to read a room, know how to not trip people over with a dog, know how to move tactically and not be a burden to anybody, and also be there where they're needed. So I was, I guess, in that perfect spot doing 5 years or whatever I'd done, 4 years as an assaulter already. And over here, we do a on-the-job training course initially, which is a 4-week course where we pump the guys with information, every aspect of dogs, from training, all kennel stuff, medical, everything. We do a 4-week, and we're also, during that 4-week phase, we're trying to figure out with the dogs that we have, who's suited for what dog. Personality traits suited to certain dogs. This is a perfect scenario. It doesn't always happen like this. These days the retention rate's different. So a lot of guys are going into the cell, which are a lot newer. And also, the obtaining dogs, it's not always a perfect situation where you've got 4 dogs, green dogs that are ready to be teamed. It's all over the place. So we do a 4-week on the job training package. You get through that, you get teamed with a dog. And then a few weeks later, we start our dog course, which I think was either 8 weeks, 6-8 weeks, I think. Very intense. We start off in the classroom, and we're doing everything. So you're going over the basics of dog anatomy. We're doing medical training with the dog. So we go out to a hospital. We actually work on cadavers. And anyone that's a dog lover that's ever worked on dog cadavers knows it's a fucking horrible experience. I hate it. I'm quite comfortable around human dead bodies. It doesn't seem to faze me whatsoever, but dealing with dogs, I do it, but it's like afterwards I can't eat for a while, and I can still smell it, and it's just, it's someone's pet that's been donated for research, and it's you can see, that dog was loved, and it's different. So I hate doing that, but we do it, and it's really valuable training. We do trauma care for the dogs and everything, so the guys know what to do when the dog gets shot. We know how to deal with kennel issues as well. So we go through that. We go through classical conditioning, all the Pavlov and all that sort of stuff. We go into operant conditioning, learning about the quadrants of dog training, really trying to drill that into guys to get them to understand, in the dog training world, that positive and negative is not good or bad. Positive is, adding something, and negative is taking something away. And we really try and get them to understand that terminology and how to problem solve when you've got a dog, how to use areas of those quadrants to figure out your solution. So we do a lot of time with that. Before guys are given putting an e-collar on the dog, they're learning e-collar in the classroom. They're going through up to the maximum setting on their fingers. So you go all the way up and see what it feels like. We do an exercise where we get the guys to put them on, and on a level, the lowest level possible, just like we would a dog. Without talking, we get the guys to, we give them a task and get the guy, the guy wearing the e-collar to do that task without giving him any information. It's all just through stim on the e-collar. So that gives them a good understanding of how to use that left and right of arc with that positive punishment, and also using negative reinforcement as well with the e-collar. So we do all that. We teach guys, how to use a prong correctly and everything before they're even given a dog to train. And then when it comes to training the dog, we train our own dogs. I think the guys have now got a setup where they're starting to get more dogs that have been trained. I think Jerry Bradshaw, I think, supplied some of the dogs the boys have now, and I think they were pretty good as well. There's a group in Australia that have supplied the dogs, some dogs, K9 Solutions, I think they're called. But when I was in there, it was, and they're still training it this way, that you learn how to train a dog. You're not a dog handler, or you are, but you're learning the training aspects, so that even if you've got a dog like I did, Guge was given to me, he had already done the bulk of his fundamental training, was at a good level, but you need to know how to train a dog, because you go out, once you get a dog, you are out on your own with that dog, with your company, and you need to know how to problem solve. You need to know how to identify an issue, how to work that issue, how to have outcome focused training. We drill that into guys when we go do a serial. For instance, to say we've got a bunch of buildings booked to do clearances to a bite suit. We've got some blind, some with bite suits in there, and we will say, we're going out here to do this search training. What's your major outcome for this? And guys will say, my dog's not outing, so I want to work on the out. And it's like, no, we're out here. Your outcome is for your dog to locate and engage that decoy successfully. If you want to do bite work, we can do bite work another time. Or you don't participate if you don't think you're a level, and we'll bring the decoy out and we'll do some one-on-one bite work training for you to get your out, whatever it be. Guys need to be able to understand that aspect of dog training, that you need to problem solve, you need to pick your environments and pick your training scenarios for when you're going to problem solve. And although, it's only a little time we spend on dogs, the guys do learn a lot. I was, so I did my course. Yeah. We do a lot of scenario. You get to a point when you're bonded with the dog, you're working with the dog. We do lots of scenario training. And so the qualification for us is 2 big day serials and 1 big night serial, which will involve a infill, which will involve a target, prosecution of a target, moving through a target, whatever that be. It will have multiple phases to it, and then an exfiltration as well. There'll usually be linked tasks during the day serials, so guys will have to train their dogs to be able to go from a bite serial to go and do tracking straight after, which you guys would know is a really, really complicated thing. It takes some time to get a dog to retask. Although we are a very, very young capability, the good thing about our capability is it was created by people that were the best in that world. The SAS helped raise our capability, and all the training and all the principles of what we do came from the best programs in the world. So they went through their test and adjust and got their programs, and we took the best of the best and we made a program out of that. So Guge and I got qualified off the back of that, and I went to go work with Bravo Company as a dog handler. That was initially so most of our operational time was, all of it was on the domestic counterterrorism team again. So this time I was obviously a combat assault dog handler within that team, which is obviously a very different experience, brings its own challenges. Everything you're doing, you're now bringing a dog. So fast roping out of a chopper, abseiling down a high-rise building, jumping out of planes and boats and helicopters, everything you're doing, you're now bringing a dog along. And it's a steep learning curve, especially for the dogs. And, we can talk about that, the issues within a special forces unit, how the problems that we have with time frames and trying to get dogs qualified, and applying that pressure and sometimes applying too much pressure.
Yeah, we'll go ahead. I'll tell you what, we'll go ahead and break here.
Yep.
And then when we come back from the commercial break, we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
And I have a couple of questions. I want to back up just a little bit. And so just guys, stick around, check the bottom of the show notes. If you fast forward to the commercial, all the discount codes are there. So we will be right back. We have a long-standing relationship with the guys over at HITS K9 Training Conference. It's truly America's premier K9 seminar. It is the largest. It is the best. They cover every important topic in the K9 industry. Hundreds and hundreds of vendors, thousands of K9 people there. Everybody you know in this industry is there. Ted and I will be teaching. HITS 2022 is being held in Orlando, Florida, August 16th to the 19th. Also, check out their website, hitsk9.net. They have other classes that they're putting out online, Zoom classes and all kinds of other things. They're offering in-person classes leading up to HITS 2022, Orlando, Florida, August 16th to the 19th. Check it out, hitsk9.net.
Everyone knows that I live on chicken nuggets and Coors Light. So that doesn't mean your dog should, though. Our friends at Kinetic make it a point to fuel working dogs, and they know that it can be tough and they need high quality food, unlike me, to give them energy and the nutrients that they require. I just subsist on air and Coors Light, but the dogs can't. They actually have to work. So for that, we asked Kinetic, and Kinetic has come up with a great balance of healthy meats and grains, and is made specifically for working and sport dogs. They have a full line of foods and supplements available, and they've been working to perfect their line for thousands of dogs in hundreds of departments across the U.S. You can buy it locally online or at Tractor Supply, or you can get it at Chewy. So head over to their website, kineticdogfood.com, 513-615-6904. And get them on the socials at Kinetic Dog Food.
So probably the number one product I've ever advertised for or used that does what they say is Quick Derm by Vet Care. I have it at my house. I have it at the kennel. I have it at the fun house. I have it at the doggy daycare. I have my trainers have it at their house. It is unbelievable how it works. You guys have all heard Ted and I talk about it, how we've gotten tagged by dogs, or dogs do, if you're dealing with working dogs, weird stuff happens, right? Cuts how the hell that happened? Bites, scratches, all kinds of things that happen, especially if you're doing anything in the wooded area, they get tore up. The Quick Derm by Vet Care, it is no exaggeration. It is great. So once daily treatment for any skin condition or small wounds to help stop little issues from becoming big ones. Comes in sprays, ointments, or dressing. Quick Derm is great at creating a protective barrier and promoting wound healing. The best thing, too, is they have a discount code. Get on their website, vetcare.us. That's vetcare.us. Put in the discount code 10WDR in capital letters, 10WDR, for 10% off your first order.
These next guys have actually been on the show, and we instructed at the first Tripwire conference down in Florida. Jim O'Brien was a guest on the show, and he runs NC-K9, who has now come onto the show as a sponsor. Jim's been around for quite a long time, about 13-ish years, with experience handling and training law enforcement canines. He uses real-world deployments to develop training program and not rely only on their experience, but current experiences from most of their national canine teams and handlers to provide the best canine partner that you guys can purchase. They provide pet training and police canine services based out of Four Oaks, North Carolina, and they serve the surrounding areas. Feel free to give Jim a call, a text, carrier pigeon, however you want to get a hold of him, to talk to him about police canine training or pets and techniques and methodologies. So hit him up at 919-438-0141 or J. O'Brien. That's JOBRIEN at NC, letter K number 9.us. Check the show notes. We'll put it there.
All right, everybody. We're back. Working Dog Radio, broadcasting the bite with Steve Moharic from Australia. Got pretty far into his background, like all the way up to where we're graduated with the dogs. I love it that they make you do training. That's really not a thing here.
No.
Not in police work, not in military. Some of the military units get to, like when I worked the West Coast SEAL contract for Cobra, the guys, by time they get there, their work up with their dog all the way to deployment is about a year. So you can actually take time to teach them about operant conditioning, but nobody ever does.
Yeah.
You just want scenarios, and we got to, get everybody up to speed for that. Especially in that program, because they were doing one tour with the dog and then going on to something else.
Yeah.
So back when you were just a regular assaulter, not a regular assaulter, I guess, but as an assaulter, did you guys have dogs deployed with you? Did you have experience to see them work?
No. So when I was in Afghanistan, as I said, that was very young capability. When I was in Afghanistan 2013, 2 handlers came over midway through the trip expecting to have dogs come over with them, and that didn't happen. It was decided it wasn't, for whatever reason, they weren't ready. Where Perth, SAS, they had dogs over in Afghanistan, but we didn't. We don't work together in Afghanistan. We had the air assets for 4 days, then they'd have the air assets for 4 days. Different partner forces. We didn't work together. Right. So I never got to see it. As I saw dogs on one exercise when I was on domestic counterterrorism. And that was, I guess that caused some issues for me when I was a dog handler. I was very much having to sell the capability. Yeah. When what happened with Perth is their soldiers got to see how fucking good dogs were in Afghanistan. They really, they love them in Perth. Or they love, compared to what the relationship that our soldiers have with dogs, they loved them. They always wanted around because they saw them in Afghanistan absolutely, decimating people and doing the job to an awesome level. And kudos to those dogs and those fucking handlers. And for us, it was different. Arriving into my company in was that 2016 back onto domestic counterterrorism with a dog, I had to sell that capability. So I was very, very fortunate that I had a good reputation with my company. I'd been around a while. No one had any issues. I had great relationships with everyone, including hierarchy. So I was really able to put that dog wherever I wanted it. They trusted my ability to run my own admin and all that, because that's what you have to do as a handler. You're organizing everything. And I'm all over that sort of stuff. So that got me that sort of level of respect to be able to bring that dog, to prove that dog. I would also do things, and back onto my mentality of being seen and getting known is when I was working Guge, I had a obedience routine that was above and beyond what other guys were doing. And I did that deliberately, and I did it around people so that people got comfortable with my ability to run a dog. So they don't understand anything that's going on, a regular assaulter, but if you're within their sight and you're doing some really polished obedience, they're like, shit, man, he's good with a dog. Okay, so it's all part of selling capability to me. It's molding perceptions, showing people that you are working that dog. You're not just kenneling it, that you're out doing that obedience training with that dog. And I bring him around the boys a lot. Our dog was always there. There's times when the dog is allowed to be social, and times when the dog isn't. When we're rigged up, when the dogs is rigged up, no one's patting the dogs. Yeah. We're an off-leash capability. So I should say that I think I missed this. We're an off-leash capability. We are as tip of special forces as you want to put it, where the dogs are capable of working within a team environment. The dogs do not bite other assaulters, and there's training that goes into that and time that goes into that to make sure that happens. And a lot of
real quick, how did you get the guys to buy into that? Because in the beginning they got an eye. Fucker, bite me in the ass. I know it's coming.
It was just being there. It was like in dog training, it was baby steps. Being there, doing some stuff where they weren't sort of in the way of the dog, and slowly bringing that back, just like we're training gunfire. The dog gets exposures from a big distance, and we're doing activities, bringing that gap until we've got a dog that's calm and workable within a range of someone shooting over its head. So I think the way that I managed that was just being there and being around, and baby steps. So I think was it that year as well that I was fortunate enough to get offered an international engagement to go to Camp Pendleton, to go to the Special Forces K9 Symposium that one of your guests, Dustin Wynn, runs. So I was fortunate enough to go over there with another bloke. We wanted to bring dogs, and I really wanted to bring Guge, so I was so proud of Guge. And We couldn't because there is a huge cost of bringing
Oh,
dogs.
I've heard.
overseas
Yeah,
from
we've
Australia.
heard
Yeah.
it like
Yeah.
insane. Yeah.
You know, you're lucky enough to go on these international engagements of them paying for that as a soldier, you know, as two soldiers, especially something within the dogs, which, you know, it wasn't snipers, it was dogs, you know, so it didn't really have that appeal yet. And that they weren't really so willing to throw money at it yet. But I was really good. I had really understanding command that saw the value in that. They sent us over. I got to meet Dustin and do some training with Dustin. I consider him a friend. You know, he's a super passionate guy. You know, what he's done with the, you know, over at Camp Pendleton is awesome. What he does now with his business, awesome again. You know, he's a really passionate guy, and I think one of the sort of pillars, I think, in the US of working dog training. You know,
Do you want to take this time to talk any shit about of all the international dog handlers? Who parties the hardest? Who can
yeah,
like
can.
stay up the latest and
Secret
you know,
Service, Secret
Fucking-
Service,
Yeah.
Secret Service, Secret
we
Service.
we had Hurricanes handler on here.
Yeah, he's a
So-
mate. I like so at
Yeah.
that symposium we had ourselves representing Australia, so 2 Commando. We had Navy SEALs, 75th, you know, MARSOC, Marines, a bunch of specialist police handlers from I think New Mexico, Albuquerque, I think Ohio, maybe, I can't remember. We had the Secret Service there. It was a really, really good bunch of people, and being adult special forces and within that community, you know, we don't really bond by training as much as we bond by drinking. So there was a lot of that going down in Oceanside. You know, I did attend that the Purple Church, that club there, the strip club there.
Oceanside's nice.
Yeah,
God.
I did get myself into some trouble there as well. That saw me not come to one of the training days. Sorry, Dustin.
Oh, my God.
But that was an awesome trip. You know, that really, at that point going over there, I mean, as Australian Special Forces, we're very humble and very private with our capability. You know, it's just the way it is. You know, it's very. I can know there'd be guys. My appearance on social media would be annoying some guys. You know, they're very quiet professionals in our world. So going over to that symposium, I was very much in the mentality that, shit, man, I don't really know much. I've just got to go here and see how everyone else is working. But it gave me a lot of confidence to know that our program was very, very efficient. That even though I only had a small time with dogs, my knowledge base was definitely up there with those guys. Experience, no. Okay, especially with some of the master trainers and stuff there that were attending that. But, you know, I felt very capable, and seeing the dogs, you know, I think Guge would have outperformed every dog there. Sorry, guys that are from that conference that are listening. But
Talk shit, buddy.
I would have loved to have him there. You know, it opened my eyes to different training methods. You know, the dog world has a lot of judgment. You know, a lot of guys get set in their lane and they're so fucking stubborn and they don't want to move. Their minds are fucking closed and it limits their potential. You know, going over there, I saw dogs which were in my opinion, too odor focused. So we're now in the realm, and same as our unit, where we were doing, you know, multi-purpose canines, where it was, you know, apprehension and searching, with tracking, and also explosive detection. We're lucky in Australia and Australian SOF, we have engineer regiments attached to our units that have dedicated explosive odor detection canines. So at the moment, we can still rest on them being way more capable than we are. So we are more attack focused, but the guys are definitely, I know now, they've really worked on that capability and it's really come up leaps and bounds. But, you know, I would see dogs that were too, in my opinion, odor focused and not looking around first and using wind scent. They were looking at the ground and stuff. And I was quick to judge it, you know, and then talking to the handlers, you would talk about their experience in their realm, whether it's police realm or the military realm. And, their dogs were molded by their experiences. If they were doing fighting in Fallujah, where they were doing door kicking and they were hit with explosives and IEDs all the time, guess what? Their dogs were doing more explosive odor detection than attack work. Where we're in Afghanistan, we were operating in rural areas, you know, green belts, big long green areas in between the, you know, in the creeks and the mountains to villages, where our IED threat, unless it was a drug lab, was really, really low. So we fought like that. We wanted dogs that were able to push out in front of us hundreds of meters by themselves and look for people that were waiting for us to activate those ambushes, whether being, engaging with the fighters or being shot at. So it was interesting. It sort of made me go, yeah, cool. I understand that now. I understand why your dog does that. And I definitely can't judge it because it makes fucking sense. Your capability is molded by your experience, which is the way we not only doing dogs, but all our training. It's molded by our experience in Afghanistan. It's molded by our experience in Iraq. And our counterterrorism experience is molded by that space, what we see. So you can't train like people are training in the US or whatever. You're going to train how we need to train. So that symposium was awesome. I made a lot of good friends, did a lot of drinking. There was one time, and again on that, we were doing some water, putting the dogs off the boats into water and swimming to an island. And so I thought it was an island, but it was part of a beachhead. And as the dog, it was by itself, and it came up on the beach and it started searching the beach. This was an odor-focused dog, thank fuck, because there was a civilian just over the crest of the hill on that. And I shat myself because in my world, my dog is not looking down. He's getting to that beach and he's looking up and he's going straight for that person. So I'm puckered up thinking, oh shit, you guys are about to get in real trouble. But luckily that was an odor-focused dog. It kept its head down and the guy was able to recall that dog. But it was a good example of the different ways that you use dog and how one focus can compromise the other. So that was some good, I got to do some other training with some other international teams. And, I saw some people that would call themselves master trainers and whatever else, and were still doing things like equipment focused scenarios, letting dogs take ownership of bite sleeves, talking to decoys like they were part of the team in front of the dogs, doing all that sort of stuff. Like we're very, very strict on that shit. We don't let people wear our uniform and a bite sleeve and stuff, we make sure the picture is very clear to the dog. When I see things like that and I see people call themselves master trainers, I start to question that label, for that person.
There's a lot of, I think that's the military working dog program out of Lackland. And I might be wrong on this, but I see a lot of guys in military uniforms taking bites.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
So we wanted to back up. Ted and I we're going to ask you back.
Yep.
Talking about the way you worked in special operations. So we talked to, and it is kind of different for each kind of unit, like you're talking about. Our big focus when I was out with the SEAL contract was a route clearance. They were landing on the Y, patrol in, hit the target. But then guys we've had on that were in some of the tier 1 units, they're landing and hitting. Probably the same thing you are.
Yeah.
So the dogs direct, definitely a little bit more direct action. The other big difference in a lot of these units is some work where the dog's free flowing and every guy on the team can direct the dog or handle the dog, and some one guy, one dog, everybody else does everything. How'd you, without getting into too much specifics, was your style?
So within my team itself, so when I'm talking about the other assaulters in the team that I'm working with, so I was embedded with my platoon. My dog got to know everyone in my platoon very well. The smells, the way they move, dogs pick up on that just like we do. And I would tell those guys, so they're not handlers, I would tell them that I'm Guge's dad, you're his uncle. He's going to listen to the commands that I teach you, which is the search commands and direction commands. That's all you need to know. Call his name, give him that command. He'll run over to you. He's not going to engage you, and you just send him through with our directional command, and he'll do that. Don't get into a situation of trying to challenge him. You've got no reason to. You've got no reason to pick him up, to fight with him, no reason to tell him no. He doesn't respect you like that. He doesn't see you as he sees me. Now, with the other handlers, because there was situations where other handlers, we're all got one dog that we stick with, and you might get another dog during your career, but for the most part, you got one dog. But sometimes someone's dog is injured or whatever, they'll come to you, say, I've got to do this demonstration, I've got to do this training exercise, do you mind if I borrow your dog? Because those guys have that level of training, they can manage our dogs, So other guys, Guge just wants to work. So you can get a guy to handle him as long as he's got some authority and some balls about him. He's going to be able to handle Guge. Guge is obviously going to have a bit of trouble learning his commands in his tonal delivery and his voice. The dogs are, you guys know that's a very important aspect of dog training. Everything is those commands and how they're delivered, and he might hear those differently, but for the most part, these guys, a different handler can swap between different dogs, and they're going to have success with that dog.
Ted, where do you have any of the cop guys that do the SWAT stuff that try to work that way? What I find over here is in Ohio is it's so much part-time teams that there's just no way. I mean,
no,
it's not on the entry element.
No, it's not. They're not working that dog at that level. I mean, they're so strapped for resources as it is here that the dog is like a massive resource to a team, and the amount of training. I mean, as you know this, like the amount of training is insane that goes into that, and these dudes are lucky to get the minimum amount of training as it is just to be for patrol stuff. So normally most SWAT dogs in the United States or on the police side are limited to either like some of the high risk tracking stuff, which there should be more of that training, or they're stuck on perimeter. Like rarely, unless they're dedicated in like massive departments like LAPD, for example, like Gooseby and those dudes, they're assigned to SWAT and they do a fantastic job. But
I think for police, I think you can get some military handlers that judge police, and I never will, because if we're going to break down, our career into 100 minutes, of those 100 minutes, for 99 of those, I'm training. For 1%, I'm operational. If you're a police officer, you are operational for 99 minutes and you are training for 1. All right. And obviously that is absolutely not ideal for a dog handler, but that's the cards they're dealt. That's the way it works. If you want to change that, you're now going to have to employ a shit ton more handlers, a shit ton more dogs, because while those guys are off training, other guys need to fill that gap on the street in those areas of responsibility. You're going to have more downtime. It's just not feasible. So I've never judged police, and I understand that problem. It is fucking difficult for them.
It's a
I'm
weird
gonna steal
deal,
that analogy.
Yeah, because in the United States, like our military, with the exception of National Guard, is like forbidden from deploying in the United States. And I mean, they and that is a like they do not play fuck around. That goes all the way back to like back with the redcoats. Like that goes way back to the day.
Well,
and
mate,
so
things are different because so keep going.
Yeah. So here, like, we have the federal stuff. Like we've got VORTAC, which we've been trying to have a dude on from there forever. We've got VORTAC, we've got the FBI SRT guys, we've got the marshals, and they all have their own, and they train with those specialized units. But, by and large, like, they're like, they may do some like assist and advise stuff, but they're not deploying like on your counterterrorism team. Like if they deployed the fucking SEALs or Delta within the borders of the United States, like I think people would lose their shit. Like, so people be like, what? I mean, they train like all the time, like where Eric was at, like up at Muscatatuck, like, they train like obviously within the United States all the time, but that does not happen here. So,
well, mate, we've got soldiers deployed currently that are helping police COVID bloody quarantine hospitals and stuff. So it's a different environment over here, but it is a resource thing as well, mate. We have smaller teams. We have a smaller specialist police capability. We have a smaller special forces capability. So that overlap, I mean, it's sort of inevitable. They can't throw the same money and training at the specialist police units that they can at us in order for us to fill that gap for domestic counterterrorism. So it's different countries run completely different. There's pros and cons of both. They're very, very different. I mean, we're experiencing right now the difference in our two countries.
We're just not. I'm not
gonna
fucking say anything. How about
I
that?
just get pissed off, so I don't even. I'm sure you.
I just live here, and I just tell people because it happens a lot where they say, well, here we do, or wherever. Like, and I'm like, and it happens a lot with people from not necessarily Australia, from other countries that are sort of other than Australia. Like, well, you guys police very differently there. I'm like, yeah, we do. Like, and we have a very different legal system than you people do. And we have a very, very weak form of central government. So like, it's really rare. It's really strange for them to hear that the United States is like 50 individual countries almost,
Yeah,
with
it
like a
is. It
weak central
is.
government.
Yeah.
And believe me, I live in a state where they love to tell the federal government to fuck off any chance they get, and
Yeah.
we have to be sued by the feds to get them to do shit here,
Yeah.
and like they're proud of that. I'm like, whether it's right or wrong is neither here or there, but I'm like, yeah,
Yep.
okay. So
Yeah.
it's a very weird thing. And they're like, why don't they just have the government tell them what to do? I'm like, that's not how it works here.
It's a slippery slope.
Nope. We don't do that shit here.
Yeah, look, Australian culture, if you want to talk about, just have mentioned that very quickly, and our culture is, I think, a bit too quick to sacrifice our freedom for security. You know, it's a difference, I think, between our two nations. I've spent a lot of time in the US. In fact, I really wanted to move there, and I still do one day. I love it in the US because of that protection of freedom. You know, it definitely brings a bit of less security, but I guess it's what you value, you know, and I do like that about the US. I think it's an absolutely beautiful country, and I've only ever enjoyed myself over there. And yeah, it's just two countries that are ran very differently, and there's pros and cons of both, you know. And talking about, you know, like your police, you know, I hate it when people in Australia want to judge US police officers, you know, for being heavy-handed and blah blah blah. We do not have it anything like that in the US. You know, you guys, we have a healthcare and a welfare system that really stops us for having that true sort of poverty. We don't, I mean, we have poor people, don't get me wrong, and we have places that are rough and everything, but we don't have that poverty. And I've seen it in the US that leads to that desperation that has bred that gang culture in the streets, you know, and they're tooled up, and they are tooled up massively, you know. And being a police officer that's working one of those areas and not knowing if that guy has a firearm that's even better than yours in the car, and how prepped he is to use it, you know, it is a fucking stressful. These guys are at war, you know. So a reaction being quicker and a hard reaction being quicker than our police, yeah, no fucking shit. You know, as it is with we're talking about capability molded by experience. Your police work is molded by your experience over there, you know. So I won't judge. It's a difficult situation there for a lot of police officers in the US, and being able to make that call between their own personal safety and the public safety, and doing something that, you know, the public is going to crucify them for.
We're kind of dealing with the inevitability of that now. We had the whole defund culture happen, and then that happened. And shockingly, the cities where that happened, shit is burning down,
falling apart.
And people are like, oh, and now, and you know, they're now asking elected officials, like, what the fuck is going on? And they're like, this is what you asked for, bro. And like, everybody's like, oh, this is not what we meant. Like, it's not what we wanted. And forever, what I said from the beginning is they're like, defund the police. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm not arguing that we shouldn't spend more money on social programs, but why does that have to come from law enforcement? Like, why can't it come from the other fucking 900 other programs that are going on, like as an equal proportion? And everybody kind of looked at me like I was crazy. And fast forward, 16 months, and people were like, oh, we're tired of murders going up. We're tired of our shit getting stolen. And I'm like, oh, well, shoot back. I don't know what you want me to tell you. Like, they're not coming. Nobody's coming to save you. Like, you live in Detroit. Sorry, Detroit. But I mean, you live in Detroit, or one of the large cities up in the northern part of the country. Minneapolis is a perfect example. That place, like, that went fucking weird. And, I know K9 handlers up there, and they do a great job. And they were getting fucking shit on for doing their job. And I understand what's happening, and I understand the context and all that other shit and everything's going on. But they're like, oh, we don't need any cops. I'm like, you motherfucker, you wouldn't even go next door to tell your neighbor to turn their radio down.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, we don't need the cops. I'm like, okay. And it's those people are the same ones that are now that same group of the same people that are like, why isn't the government enforcing COVID restrictions? I'm like, you literally asked them to not do anything, and now you want them to, and it's the same group of fucking people. And I'm like, I'd just pick a struggle. Like, pick one. Pick a fucking struggle and deal with it. Like,
people just like to make noise without really thinking about what that noise is, and social media has become this place where everyone thinks their opinions matter, and they get stuck up in a movement which makes them look good to their friends and blah blah blah, and they just push that out there, not really having a stop and a think about the repercussions of what they're talking about, and it's an unfortunate situation, and it's something that I really try and stay away from, because it really invokes an emotional reaction from me, especially when you're talking about police and stuff, and you're putting police in a situation where they're going to be in a situation where they're hesitating, you know, a life or death situation, whether it's for them or a member of the public, and now they've got a hesitation in their head where they're not just positive identification, weapon, bang, I've done my job. It's holy shit, what's going to happen afterwards? You know, and that's a really dangerous. My brother is a police officer, and when he got through, and I went to his march out, his march out parade and the dinner afterwards, and that's what I said to him. I said, mate, you know, if you're ever in that situation, just you make the call quickly and you deal with the repercussions afterwards, but you keep yourself alive. You know, it's that's that saying. What is it? I'd rather be, what is it, judged by 12 than carried by 6 or whatever it is.
Yep.
You know? Yep.
So before we take our next break, real quick, let's shift back to Dustin's symposium. You seem like a guy who has a thirst for learning. So when you get back to Australia, what is one or two things you picked from there that you said, I'm going to do this with Guge? That seems to work maybe differently or better.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. You know, I was definitely there was some water stuff. So a lot of water stuff they were doing. You know, I was swimming Guge. You know, we do massive infills, whether we're parachuting, whether we're helo casting, or whether we're sliding off the side of a boat, and we're swimming into a beach by night to do a clearance. I'd probably put on the back burner Guge swimming. You know, some of these guys have come up with pretty ingenious ways to lower their noise profile, doing the swimming infill and everything like that, which I saw some of the techniques they were using and some of the training they'd put into it, and took that back. And it's something I worked with Guge. You know, when I first got him, he couldn't even swim, so I had to teach him how to swim. It was my first time that I realized that not all dogs naturally swim. So I definitely put more effort into that. And there was just some movement within the team, some takeaways from that we bring back to the unit. A lot of the odor training. So that's a lot of the keys we took, and I won't go into the details of all that sort of stuff, but when we went over there, we were just starting with our odor, very basics of it. And we went over there, you know, the SEALs, even a lot of the police and everything were doing some awesome things with odor. So we took a lot of the keys and a lot of the training techniques that they were using for explosive odor detection. We brought that back to Australia and we implemented it. You know, so
that's awesome. All right, we're going to go ahead and take another break. When we get back, we're going to talk about Guge living the high life now, buddy. So listen to the commercials, support our sponsors, guys. We got great sponsors on there. Take a look at them, and we'll be right back. All right, guys, this episode has been brought to you by great sponsors of ours. Please don't skip through this. Take a listen to them. One of our oldest sponsors and great friends of ours are the people down at Highland K9 down in North Carolina. I really like them. We see them at all the conferences. I know a lot of people have been to their school for dog trainers. They've been on the podcast. Highland K9, they're a full service canine and pet dog training business where they can train you to be a trainer. They can get you a dog. They have handler classes. They have supervisor classes. They have trainers courses for just LE. They have them for anybody who wants to be in the dog business, be a dog trainer of any kind. Check them out. Their website is tacticalpoliceK9training.com, tacticalpoliceK9training.com. If you are smart, you'll go down there in the winter. It is North Carolina. It is warm. You get to work dogs. It's no joke school, guys. You're not going down there for a month and rushing through it. They're actually trying to make you real deal dog trainers. TacticalpoliceK9training.com.
Next is a sponsor that's been with us for quite a while, Dogtra. I love Dogtra stuff, and they continually keep bringing out new products. One of the things that I've been using a lot lately is the new Tone Box. If you're a pet trainer or if you train a lot of police officers, and I harp at my guys all the time about timing, and this thing literally compares to the remote. And when you're using the remote, whether you're using knit, constant, or vibrate, it makes a noise. So you can get the timing down 100% consistent. And so I can demonstrate how to do an out with an e-collar immediately, quickly, and it is so effective that I can't believe that it took me forever to figure it out to get that. They've also got these new comfort feather, like titanium things that go on the collars that are fantastic for making sure we got contact. It actually has 6 points, and this comes in 2 sizes, and it's a titanium feather thing. They're awesome. They got comfort contact points for the bark collars, the YS600, one of my favorite things. I have about 50 of them at the kennel, and it is dead silent. and I put them on all the pet dogs, and I can leave them on because they have the comfort contact points and they're fantastic. All this stuff you can get at dogtra.com. And if you use the discount code WDR10, you get 10% off a single item over $200. So that covers the ball trainer, that covers the 1900 hands free, which is my personal favorite for all the big dogs. It covers the 2-dog system, the 202C, which I use for the 2-dog pet guys, and fantastic. So dogtra.com, or go to @dogtraofficial on all the socials. That's Facebook, Instagram, all those places. So hit them up, dogtra.com.
Guys, I don't even shop any other sites when I'm looking for everything for dogs. Our one-stop shop for anything pet dog training and police dog training, hunt dog training, anything you need, you can find at rayallen.com. They have been doing it forever. We have a great relationship with them. Again, they're at all the conferences. You can stop up and talk to them. They have more stuff there than any place. rayallen.com. They are amazing. We have a great, really, really good relationship with those guys. Like I said, I get on their website. I do not look anywhere else. I just get on Ray Allen. Why should I? Fill up my cart, pay it, boom, shipping. Here we go. Everything's coming. rayallen.com. And guess what? We do have a discount code for them. Working Dog Radio for 10% off. It's all one, Working Dog Radio, and it's all caps. Check them out, rayallen.com.
I'm not too ashamed to admit that I used our own discount code to buy stuff for the kennel. We have American Aluminum next. They're a new sponsor for moving forward. They have been around for quite a while. They manufacture a wide variety of products, from the high-quality cam lockers and toolboxes to a huge line of products designed to meet the ever-changing needs of law enforcement community. Back in 1992, due to the demand for safe, secure transport for a nearby law enforcement department's K9, they introduced the very first Easy Rider K9. They have continuously grown and expanded products, catering to the needs and wants of the valued customers and high-profile clientele. Over the years, as the needs have changed, they have evolved and expanded their products to include inmate transport systems, canine training aids, canine inserts, contraband, containment, and animal control systems, just to name a couple things. So you can find them at easyrideronline.com. That is Easy Echo Zulu Rider Online.com. You can find them on the socials at American Aluminum Accessories, and then you can hit them up toll free, 1-800-277-0869. You don't have to worry about writing all that down. We're going to put it in the show notes. So just scroll down to the bottom, write it down, click the link, takes you straight there out into your phone.
Our first sponsor we ever had, he's our ride or die. He's been with us since the beginning, is Arno over at ALM K9 Equipment. His stuff is so good. Ted, gets suits. Ted's suit, he's had it for a long time. Arno's fixed it. He's taken 1 million bites on it. It still holds up. The thing's amazing. I've got a suit from him. I love it. Use it all the time. But the main thing that I really love about Arno is his hidden sleeves are ridiculously amazing. They are the best. And his tugs. I usually buy tugs from Arno by the box load. He'll send me a whole bunch of them. I hand them out to the handlers, new handlers when they come in, experienced handlers. They last for a long time. They're amazing. The craft work is great. Arno's doing all the sewing there. He's got pre-made suits. He can do custom-made suits, everything you need out there. And he's out there in sunny Las Vegas. Get on his website, check him out, almk9equipment.com, almk9equipment.com. Discount code WD Radio, all caps, 10% off your first order. Check them out. All right, Working Dog Radio, we're back broadcasting the bite. Another great episode here. Another one of our Australian handler guys with us, K9 Steve. So we'll fast forward. You're back. You're in there. Talk real quick about the injury and the retirement, and then your retirement and the life that you guys are living now.
Yeah, cool. This easy. He sustained an injury as a pup. He got TPLO surgery, and when he got a bit older, that caused some early onset arthritis pretty bad within that joint. So we realized through just a long process of him limping, resting, till we finally just on an inspection, we found some bruising on his groin, and he tore his, I think, meniscus. Is that what the muscle is? I forget. Yeah. And he tore that really badly to the point where it was about to snap. And he'd done that because that arthritis he was protecting the leg with arthritis. So at that point, we got him healed up. And this was just after we got him a set of titanium K9s as well, he was the first dog that Australian Defence Force had ever done. And so about a month after that, sent him back to his specialist that did his original operation, got all the scans and said, hey, yeah, look, this dog, you could probably work him another year or two, but you're going to work him into the ground. So with that, I went back to my hierarchy. I had a good reputation with them. Guge had a fantastic reputation. He made me look like a superstar. So I went to them, told them, and they were like, yeah, let's get this dog retired. 12 months, we'll get him home, and we'll having the best quality of life as possible with you. So in Australia, for us, Guge was definitely the first dog we'd ever retired that was going home at an age where he was still at his peak. He was 5.5 years old. And luckily, Guge was one of those absolute unicorn of a dogs where he is absolutely not aggressive unless you tell him to. Just super smart, calculated, confident dog. So the perfect dog for retirement. They go through a detraining phase, which for him was basically just socialization. So taking him to the beach and doing all this other stuff, introducing to other people, to children, to other dogs, doing all that, getting him out of that mindset, stopping any man-focused training completely. It's pretty much just obedience and odor from there. And he then had to go do RSPCA pet suitability testing, which for us, the dogs can't fail any component. So pets, they can fail components, but for working dogs, they can't. And the dogs have to pass this. Otherwise, the government will not sign off on them going home. Obviously, there's a mitigation aspect. Australia is their risk tolerance for anything is obviously really, really low. As I said, security for freedom. And they are not going to put a dog out on the streets with a ex-handler. That can be a problem because the repercussions of that legally would be fucking massive. So the dog, there's no bullshit. They have to pass that. The Guge passed it with flying colors. In fact, it was sort of hilarious for them to like watching them test. They don't let you be in the room in case you are guiding the dog or the dog. They want to try and instill some anxiety, separation anxiety, do all that. They do a bunch of funny tests because they're trying not to get bitten. So they got like kid dolls that they bring in, and see if the dog reacts to a doll, and they feed the dog, and they go through all different levels of different sort of food in value, to what it would be to a dog. And they get this arm and they try and like take the bowl away from the dog to see if it's got resource guarding. They test for separation anxiety. They introduce it to other dogs to see if there's any aggression towards other dogs. So that starts with a soft meeting through a chain link fence with a really low drive dog, all the way up until a meeting with a super high drive dog one-on-one, and they have to pass all that. So it's quite intensive, and for good reason. I'm definitely in support of that process because we don't want any issues, and he did all that, came home with me. I was still serving, but I was going through my own dark space at that point, and I put my hand up to get help with all that. And basically that started the progression to the end of my career as well, where I went through almost a detraining phase like Guge. I spent a lot of time to make sure that my landing outside of defense was as smooth as possible. I had a lot of issues that led to my divorce as well. I was married through all this, unfortunately. And, I had to take ownership of all that, which I did, and very intense as well. Did a lot of therapy and everything like that. And we're lucky we do have those. That support is available to us. The guys really have to put their hand up for it because otherwise, how do you know? But in my experience, I know other guys have had different exits, but my unit was so good to me and afforded me all the time and all the resources I needed to smoothly transition. So 2020, I spent time during that phase. I was just in the dog cell helping development. So dogs that were coming in from overseas, meeting them at quarantine down in Melbourne, because we've got to look after them down there for 10 days because, the staff there won't look after attack dogs. Dogs come back here doing all the fundamental training, the imprinting, doing, I was part of, the phase that saw that change from compulsion style training to more positive methods, and we brought in, Pat Stewart had something to this, bringing in Bart Ballin to run silver and gold courses. So we adopted the NEPO system. Obviously, the stuff of that were really valuable. Stuff of that more sport dog focused wasn't valuable for us, but we took the clicker training aspect and that shaping and luring behaviors at the start through positive reinforcement, getting the dog to know exactly what you want it to do, and then setting the left of right with positive punishment and pushing them further, adding pressure with negative reinforcement and doing all that, rather than just throwing a task at a dog and fucking just doing it until they get it, being hard on them. You know, Guge was probably the last dog that went through that style of training. I think he was a dog that training was suited for. Some dogs I think are suited for that style. You know, he responded well. He was a really good dog. I don't do that sort of training with him anymore. It's all clicker work when I'm doing new stuff with him, but he's slowed down massively. He's not the same dog, and I have a ridiculously strong bond with him. So there's no longer this jostling for power, which he showed me in the first probably 6 to 9 months of our relationship, you know, where he didn't need me. When I met him first, he didn't need me. I facilitated his training. He didn't want me to pat him.
Yeah, open
he put
the
up
gate.
with me.
Let me go.
Yeah. He put up with me. He would test me constantly testing me to see what he could get away with. Obviously, if I didn't identify those things and meet that with a correction, he would escalate that, you know, and he turned around on me a few times coming off bites and stuff like that I caught. The handler before me, the trainer, he wasn't so lucky. And I think Guge put him in hospital twice. But I got put in hospital by another dog anyway. You know what happens. And yeah. I thought I nearly got to the end of my time in the kennels without getting done. I thought I was a Caesar Milan of bloody the working dog environment. And then one dog I took on because he'd bitten everyone else. I thought I had a great relationship with this dog, took it on one walk, end of the walk, he turned on me. And that humbled me very quickly, as it does. You know, a 40-kilo Malinois hanging off your arm is not a pleasant experience. I mean, you guys would have experienced that multiple times. You know, they fucking hurt. Pain compliance is a real thing. You know, people say, "I'll fight the dog. I'll fight the dog." Pain compliance is a real thing.
How about it? Yeah. So, Guge is special. So he's special. He's obviously special to you, like mine. I put mine in his kennel because he's an asshole. But so Australia is weird about getting dogs in there. Like it takes for fucking ever to get dogs in. Like you guys are in quarantine for like 7 years or something ridiculous. You said 10 days, but it's longer than that.
Six months overseas. 6 months overseas, 10 days in the country.
Yeah, which is ridiculous, right? So you guys did something that we don't do here. So the reason, because in the United States, like when a dog gets brought over from wherever, they go off to work at a police department or some military unit and they're never heard from again, right? They successfully go bite shitheads and find stuff, and then they sit on the couch and get fed by a handler's wife and they fucking die. And it's really sad, but we stopped that bloodline. You guys didn't do that, right?
No.
Yeah.
We identified this. Yeah, we identified this. You know, I think everyone, you guys would have experienced, there's a time there. I think it's come back to good times now, but good Malinois were impossible to find. You know, coming off the back of German Shepherd popularity.
It's not any easier today.
Yeah, well, everyone, you know, every special unit around the world wanted Malinois. So the best Malinois in Europe went to SOF units all around the world, and their bloodlines died out because no one thought, hold on, what about this? You know, we need to milk them. We need to continue these bloodlines. Our best dogs are going. So there's obviously that massive problem that was caused. You know, we're not the only people to have identified this. It became very, very hard to get good dogs. So Guge was an absolute, I talk highly of him, but trust me, I've seen dogs around the world. He was an absolute awesome dog. And we identified this issue. So we ran a breeding program, a natural breeding program at work. And we also bring a dog wanker out, and he wanked off my dog multiple times. And they put his sperm on ice, and we run a breeding program. Yeah, you know, so this bloke, I'd never experienced this before. This bloke, they're like, Steve, you need to go meet the dog wanker, and you need to bring him. Yeah.
Oh shit.
You need to bring him in. And so I bring him into the base through the gate, and he's got this van, you know, a small sort of, you know, Mercedes van, whatever it is. And he opens it up, and the back half is this laboratory. He's got microscopes and equipment, digital screens and blah, blah, blah for testing the quality and the sperm and all that sort of stuff. He opens up the side door, and out comes this show German Shepherd female. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? So he's like, he puts this glove on, you know, gets his glove on. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, can you just hold your dog? I'm like, yeah. They didn't really tell me what was going on. So I held the dog. He's like, just hold him tight, right? He gets on his knees next to me in front of my dog. And he brings his female assistant, brings this dog just to within sniffing and licking distance of Guge. He just starts whacking off Guge. Guge, he put this condom, this obviously that captures the seed, and he's just whacking. I don't know what the fuck's going on. I'm like, mate, I'm just looking at him, like, whatever, and then he finishes and he's like, bro, what's your feet? I'm like, what do you mean? And Guge is shooting everywhere. He's like, we don't catch that. That's the bad stuff. That's the bad stuff. So anyway, he goes to his van, he shows me the quality. Oh man, look at this. He's got, whatever many million per whatever, and really healthy, awesome. His sperm were carrying on just like he does, high drive, going around everywhere. And he leaves. He's like, I'm coming back in the afternoon to do another one. I'm like, okay, cool. Go down, I gather everyone into our common room, like, boys, you got to hear about what happened. Because we get called dog wankers because of that myth that I think South Park made it, that people in the dog world whack off their dogs to make them loyal. So within the unit, as a joke, they call us dog wankers. And handlers are dog wankers. But I was like, bro, I literally met an actual dog wanker. Told him the story, had a good laugh. Anyway, the bloke rocks up in the afternoon. And he comes out the van. He just like comes up to me. He's like, did you tell your mates about me? I'm like, what? He's like, I bet you had a good laugh at my expense, didn't you? I bet you're all laughing. And I'm like, what the hell? He was so self-conscious about his job. Must have been his first week or something.
I mean, yeah, you jerked off my dog.
I'm like,
yeah, I have. Yeah, it was fucking funny.
That was crazy.
Mate,
we don't use it.
To have him be that self-conscious about, I was just blown away. And I'm like, mate, we had a laugh. I'm like, but the biggest discussion is we're all figuring out what our price would be to do your job. And I was like, it was totally dependent on how many sessions you have to do a day, but hey, everyone has a price, don't they?
I guess. Like, no, you should have been like, hey, your job is extremely important to the defense of Australia. So, I mean, you're like, it's just super integral role because we're not going to fucking do it. So I'm sorry.
Right.
I mean,
it was an experience for me. And I was not expecting him to come up and pretty much predict exactly what we were doing, but it was a funny experience for me anyway. And the other side of that, so we've got a breeding program up here in Queensland that the Air Force runs, and they produce dogs there. We don't really get them down at 2 Commando in Sydney. We struck a deal with Guge's sperm to get them. Some of them go over to Perth, but most of them really are just staying within our Air Force and our military police. And the Special Forces units are getting our dogs from overseas or from different suppliers in Australia, wherever. But we also ran a natural breeding with Guge inside our kennels. And at that point, we were only 8 handlers, 1 lead handler, and 2 training assistants, which are military police handlers that are posted to our unit to help us. So there's 11 of us in there. We had 8 operational dogs and whatever many, 4 whatever development dogs, or maybe a couple at that point. And we did a breeding program with Guge, thinking we were going to get 4, 5, 6 pups, and we got 12.
No. Yeah.
We got 12, and shit got real. Unfortunately, one was stillborn, and another one, the runt, died, but we resussed it, and that had lots of complications, but it's still out there now, a lot of health issues, but it's out there now as a pet. So there were basically 11 puppies we were looking after, and things got real really quickly. The guys are already pressed between maintaining commando skills and trying to do dog handling training as well. This is balance that's really hard to achieve, which is a reason we don't get a lot of volunteers to do dogs. They really have to be dog lovers, because you are going above and beyond what's required of you as a commando. You're working weekends, you're working holidays, you're coming before and staying after everybody. Plus, you're looking after something that's totally dependent on you for survival. So I pretty much took on these pups for the first phase by myself. Everyone was helping training, but I was doing a lot of the kenneling stuff for him, because I thought I was grandfather Steve, because they were Guge's kids. Mate, looking after Malinois that you can't discourage from biting and everything. Once they get teeth, and every time you see them, they are just pissing, shitting, biting you, barking at you. Like
sometimes at the same time.
Yes, I used to
Yeah.
I used to go see them and leave just with blood all down my ankles. It was full on. I was going in twice a day over the weekends, and I was doing 7 days a week for like 8 weeks or whatever, looking after these puppies. After we sort of took them away from the mum, or even when they were with the mum, just doing cleaning and everything like that. But it was an experience. We got to learn about puppy development. We got to learn why we'd never ever want to do it again. It's great. It's great if you've got the time to be able to get a dog from birth and turn it into the exact product you want it to. But, dog training, just because you've got a good mum and a good dad doesn't mean you're producing good puppies, so you can put your heart and soul into these dogs and they don't have what it takes. But obviously it's an ideal situation for a unit to raise it from the ground up, but it's not feasible. We don't have the time. Right. You're much better off taking that chance, going to people that are really, really good at supplying Special Forces dog to give them some of those basic behaviors already, being a good bite, a good man-focused dog, redirecting some of that drives, people that have already worked it through defense drive and everything, and sort of got a bit out of that dog, worked on its agitation, and then we can mold it into specific taskings. So it's definitely a hassle getting dogs into Australia. We go to Europe and we look at dogs and have to do the titer test, because the rabies is why we have no rabies in Australia. That's why it's really hard to get him into the country. That's why it's a 6-month protest for the blood tests and everything. So you can go look at a dog. It'll sit in quarantine in Europe or whatever, meaning it's either being trained by someone. Sometimes they're sport dog focused people, which are imprinting behaviors that we don't want. Or that dog might not get trained. And often we've had dogs come over here and they're just not the dog that we looked at overseas.
Right,
as soon as they've arrived. Yeah, as soon as they're arrived. And that process can change a dog. It's a stressful process, that plane ride, everything. So we've had dogs rock up that we've paid a lot of money for, and straight out the box, you can just see this dog it's not going to do it. It's developed fear, whatever. It's got behaviors that you can see straight up. When you be around dogs a lot, you can sort of tell from young age if they have potential or if there's some sort of issue that's going to stop them. And this happened occasionally where straight away we've had dogs arrive and they've gone out as pets. And it's unfortunate, but that's the game we play. We have we have a high failure rate, because of time restraints, I think, is a big part of it. We get dogs, the selection process is hard, that transition coming to Australia is hard on them. Our training process is quick. We do the more positive focused training, but at some point, just by time, you have to apply pressure to these dogs, and if they can't deal with that pressure, then unfortunately we have to fail them, and they go out to agencies within Australia that don't have such a high demand of the dogs, going out to military, police, air force, or police. If they don't have it at all, they go out as pets. There's only the time thing is a big thing with Special Forces units.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
So Guge's life is what now?
Okay, so Guge in retirement. So we got stuck in Sydney because of COVID. We got locked out. I tried to move up here. I was locked out in Sydney for sort of 12 months. Finally got up here where I am in Queensland. I've moved here onto the Gold Coast, where I'm across the road from one of the best beaches in Australia. So Guge spends his time on the beach training, impressing people with his impeccable obedience routine. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but he does left and right and middle and everything. He does a salute. We do an awesome one which people love, which is shooting him, which he's really, really good at. I recall him and shoot him and he dies. He gets pats from everybody. He's loved. People love to see him, and I love talking about him. People come up to me all the time to ask me about dogs, and I love telling them what he's done and who he is. I'm very proud of it. I'm also very willing to open people's eyes. In Australia, you've had guests on here told you that, e-collars, prong collars, even training dogs to bite, it's not really done over here. People are frown upon it. People will see my use of a prong and send me messages and tell me how cruel I am when this dog's living the best life in the fucking world, but they have just uneducated opinions. In Australia, a lot of people lean towards that. They don't even want to train a dog. They're happy just to have some stressed out, super anxious, fearful dog. But I can't have a super relaxed, calm, loved dog. It makes no sense to me, but I love trying to change that perception in a one-on-one conversation. I don't try and change it online because you just smash your head against a brick wall. I just often I block people that are going to bring that. If I send them a reply and their reply to that reply is one of absolute no understanding, I'll just block it. I don't want to invest that energy into trying to change the mind of someone whose mind can't be changed. If you can look at Guge's and my relationship and see something negative, your problem's in the mirror. It's not with me. So whatever. But he spends his days on the beach. We still do a lot of training, a lot of obedience. He's 8 years old now. He very much still has an active mind that needs to be stimulated. He's never out of my sight. I do not let him, be in my yard by himself, unsupervised, purely for the fact that being a special forces soldier, I weigh up my worst case scenario. My worst case scenario is Guge escaping, wandering the streets, going into someone's home that's a dog hater. That person beats on Guge. Guge beats back. Guge attacks him. The short-term outcome, fucking hilarious. Long-term outcome, all that guy says, this dog attacked me unprovoked. Even though Guge, even if he doesn't say that, the fact that Guge is outside, off leash by himself, I've already lost. So the repercussions for that, for Guge, for me, for my relationship with defense and to Commando, for the retirement program could be massive. So I'm very, very risk averse with this dog. Even though he's an absolute sweetheart, he still is what he is, and I don't take that for granted. But I absolutely love him. My bond with him is really, really strong, to the point where I can have a bad sleep and Guge will literally wake me up. He lays with me, puts his arm on my chest and just waits for me to go back to sleep, and off he goes back to wherever he was. It's almost an emotional support animal relationship these days. I think I probably get a lot more out of him than he gets out of me. So I love having him. He's a hit with the ladies as well, which as a single bloke, that's a good position to be in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So tell people about where you can be found on Instagram and your TikTok. Also.
Oh, no, let's not worry about TikTok, all right? That doesn't exist. I'm not dancing with dogs, all right? We're not doing that. So on Instagram, I am K9 Steve. So it's a letter K, number 9 _ Steve. What I'm doing now is I'm getting into pet dog training with my friend Will, who owns Master of Puppies here on the Gold Coast. We're also setting up a dog sort of training, boarding and kenneling facility with a farm that he just bought, which has a huge old vet / stable that we're converting. So I'm getting my hands dirty with pet dogs, and that's a learning experience in itself, doing behavior modification, just with a lead and voice rather than teaching a dog how to do a task with, positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement and all that. It's a different world. Just trying to, create stable pets rather than a incentive focused dog.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Ted? Where can you find you at?
Ted _ Summers. Torchlight K9, letter K number 9, and Torchlight Pets is the pet side. And then HRD Police K9, and then obviously the podcast has its own working _dog _radio. And you're where?
Van Ness K9 on Instagram, Van Ness K9 Academy on Facebook, and then Ridgeside K9 Ohio on Facebook is mostly where the pet stuff is. And then we have Patreon, Working Dog Radio on Patreon. Yeah. So, Steve, man, it's been great having you on. We love it. You need to do more podcasts. I know you said this is your first one, but after this, you're going to get requests from some other folks.
Thanks, fellas. Again, thanks so much for having me. I hope you guys got some value out. I hope your listeners do as well. And any questions, people know where to find me. Shoot me a message, and I'll do my best to get back to them. So thank you so much, fellas.
All right, man. Thanks for coming on, and we will see you guys on the next one.
Excellent.